Hi guys, tonight we drift quietly into the world of the lumberjacks and the deep snowy woods of the past. The air is sharp and bites at your nose. You can see your breath turning into white clouds in front of your face. The snow is so deep that it muffles every sound, making the forest feel like a big, empty room. Your heavy wool coat feels stiff with the cold, but it keeps the wind from reaching your skin. Under your feet, the frozen ground feels as hard as stone. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you want to let me know where you are listening from and what time it is where you are, I always love seeing those little snapshots of the world. Now dim the lights and let the story begin. You are walking through the trees. Each step you take is slow and heavy. The snow comes up to your knees and it makes a soft crunching sound. Crunch, crunch. It is the only sound in the whole forest. The birds have gone away for the winter, and the animals are hiding in their burrows to stay warm. You are far away from any town. There are no shops here. There are no warm houses with glass windows. There are only the trees and the cold. The trees are very tall. They are white pines, and their tops seem to touch the grey clouds. You look up, and the sky is a soft, dull colour. It will be dark soon. In the 1800s, men came to these woods to work during the coldest months of the year. They did this because the frozen ground was like a smooth road. It was much easier to move heavy logs over ice and snow than it was to drag them through the mud of summer. This is a simple fact of the woods. The ice is your friend when you have a big job to do. You feel the weight of your pack on your shoulders. It is heavy, but it holds everything you need to survive. You are wearing a mackinaw jacket. This is a very thick coat made of heavy wool. It has a pattern of big squares on it. The wool is scratchy against your neck, but it is wonderful at keeping you warm, even if it gets a little bit wet from the snow. The wool still keeps the heat close to your body. Your hands are inside thick mittens. They are not like gloves with fingers. They are just big bags of wool that keep your fingers together so they can share their warmth. As you walk, you look for a good place to stop. You are not alone. There are other men with you, walking in a long line. No one is talking. It takes too much breath to talk while you are walking through deep snow. You just listen to the sound of the wind moving through the pine needles high above. It sounds like a soft hum. It is a lonely sound, but it is also very peaceful. The forest smells like nothing you have ever smelled before. It is the smell of clean, frozen air mixed with the scent of pine sap. It is a sharp smell that wakes up your senses. Every time you breathe in, the cold air feels like a drink of water in your throat. You stop for a moment to rest. You lean your back against the rough bark of a tree. You look around at the world of white and green. Everything is still. There is no movement at all. You take a moment to just be silent. You listen to your own heart beating slowly. You feel the stillness of the woods sinking into your bones. It is a deep, heavy kind of quiet. It is the kind of quiet that makes you feel very small, but also very safe. The forest is like a giant blanket that has fallen over everything. You reach down and touch the snow. It is light and powdery. It does not stick together like the snow you use to make a snowman. It is dry because the air is so cold. You blow on it, and it flies away like white dust. You look at your boots. They are made of thick leather and rubber. They are tied tight to keep the snow out. You wiggle your toes to make sure they are still warm. You can feel the thick wool socks you put on this morning. They are the most important thing you own. Without dry socks, the winter would be your enemy. You look ahead and see the spot where the work will begin. It is a small clearing near a frozen stream. The stream is covered in a thick layer of blue ice. You can see where the water has frozen into ripples. This is where you will build your home for the next few months. It does not look like much now. It is just a patch of snow surrounded by dark trees, but soon it will be a place of warmth. You think about the tools you are carrying. You have a big axe with a wooden handle. The handle is smooth from being held for many hours. The metal head of the axe is cold and grey. You also have a cross-cut saw. Some men call this a misery whip because it is so much hard work to use. It is a long piece of steel with sharp teeth. When two men pull it back and forth, it can bite through the thickest tree in the forest. You can feel the cold metal of the saw through your mittens. It feels like a sleeping giant, waiting to start the work. The sun is starting to go down. The light is turning a soft purple color. The shadows of the trees are getting longer and longer, stretching across the snow like thin fingers. You know that the temperature will drop even more once the sun is gone. You need to start moving again. You need to start building. You take a deep breath and step forward. Your boots sink into the snow again. Crunch, crunch. You are heading toward the center of the clearing. You and the other men will work together. You will use the trees that are standing all around you to make a shelter. You will build a shanty. A shanty is a simple house made of logs. It is not fancy. It does not have many rooms. It is just a big, sturdy box made of wood to keep the winter out. You look at the trees and imagine them as walls. You imagine a big fire in the middle of the room. You can almost smell the wood smoke already. You can almost feel the heat on your face. But for now, there is only the cold and the quiet. You keep walking one step at a time, deeper into the heart of the woods. You are a part of the forest now. The trees are your walls, and the sky is your roof. You feel a sense of pride. You are strong. You are ready for the long winter nights. You are ready for the long winter nights. You are ready to build a life in the snow. The wind picks up just a little bit. It brushes against your cheeks, reminding you that the night is coming. You pull your collar up higher. The wool of your mackinaw coat feels good against your skin. You are not afraid of the dark. You have your tools, you have your friends, and you have the strength in your arms. You are a lumberjack, and this forest is where you belong. You reach the spot where the first log will be cut. You stand there for a second, looking at the trees. They are so big and so old. You show them respect by being quiet. You take one last look at the purple sky before the stars begin to come out. The first day in the woods is almost over, but the real work is just about to start. You stand in the middle of the clearing and look at the trees that surround you. To build a good shanty, you need the right kind of wood. You cannot just pick any tree. You need logs that are long, straight, and strong. Your eyes move slowly over the trunks. Most of the trees here are white pines. In the 1800s, the white pine was the king of the forest. These trees are special because they grow very tall and very straight, like the mast of a big ship. The wood is also quite light, which makes it easier for you to move it through the deep snow. This is a simple fact that every woodsman knows. The white pine is the best friend of the shanty builder. You walk toward a tree that looks promising. The snow is deep, so you have to lift your knees high with every step. You feel the muscles in your legs working. It is a slow, steady rhythm. When you reach the tree, you reach out a hand and touch the bark. It feels rough and cold. It is a dark grey colour with deep lines running up and down. You look up, following the trunk as it goes higher and higher into the sky. It does not lean to the left or the right. It is as straight as a line drawn with a ruler. This is exactly what you need for the walls of your new home. If the logs are crooked, the wind will find its way through the gaps, and you will be cold all winter. You are carrying your felling axe. This is a special tool made just for cutting down big trees. The head of the axe is thin and very sharp. The handle is made of hickory wood, which is strong but also a little bit springy. It feels balanced in your hand. You have spent many hours sharpening this blade with a flat stone. You want it to bite deep into the wood without bouncing off. You tap the bark with the back of the axe. The sound is a dull thud. This tells you the tree is solid and healthy inside. There is no rot here. This tree will keep you safe and warm. You move to the next tree. You are looking for trees that are all about the same thickness. If one log is much bigger than the others, the wall will be uneven. You want the logs to be about the size of a large man's waist. You use your arms to measure the trunk, reaching around it until your fingertips almost touch. You nod to yourself. This is a good one. You take your axe and make a small mark in the bark. This is called a blaze. It is a white scar on the dark wood that tells the other men this tree has been chosen. The forest is so quiet that you can hear your own breath. It sounds like a soft whistle in the cold air. You stop for a moment and just look around. The sun is almost vanished now, and the woods are filled with a soft blue light. A single snowflake falls from the sky and lands on your mitten. You watch it for a second. It is a tiny, perfect star made of ice. Then another one falls, and another. Soon, the air is filled with white dots drifting slowly down through the branches. They do not make a sound. They just add to the thick carpet of white on the ground. You stand perfectly still, letting the snow fall on your shoulders. In this moment, the forest feels like it is holding its breath. You feel very peaceful. There is no hurry here. The trees have been standing for 100 years, and they are not going anywhere. You walk a bit further, finding 3 more trees that are perfect for the shanty. You think about the work ahead. Each of these trees will have to be cut down by hand. There are no machines here. There are no motors to help you. It is just the strength of your back and the sharpness of your axe. You feel a sense of pride in your strength. Your body is used to this kind of work. Your hands are covered in thick calluses, which are patches of hard skin that protect you from blisters. They are like a natural pair of gloves. You notice the smell of the pine again. When you marked the trees with your axe, a little bit of the sticky sap came out. It smells sweet and sharp, like a clean forest after a rain. It sticks to your mittens, but you do not mind. It is the smell of your work. You look back at the line of trees you have marked. They stand in a row waiting. You will need many of them to build a shanty big enough for 40 men. It seems like a lot of work, but you know that if you take it one tree at a time, the job will get done. You adjust the scarf around your neck. It is made of thick, red wool that your mother or wife might have knitted for you back home. It smells like the soap from your house, a small reminder of a world that feels very far away right now. The wool is warm and soft against your chin. It protects you from the biting frost that is starting to settle on everything. You can feel the cold trying to creep into your sleeves, but your heavy clothes keep it at bay. You are like a little fortress of warmth walking through the frozen world. You see the other men starting to gather near the center of the clearing. They've also been looking for wood. Some are carrying heavy ropes, and others are clearing the snow away from the spot where the shanty will sit. You walk back toward them, your boots making that familiar crunch, crunch sound. You feel a sense of belonging. You are all here for the same reason. You are all going to build this house together. As you walk, you pass a small bush covered in red berries. They look like bright drops of blood against the white snow. You do not eat them, for you know that some berries in the woods are not safe, but they are pretty to look at. They are the only bit of bright color in this world of grey, green, and white. You take a deep breath of the freezing air. It is so cold it almost hurts, but it makes you feel alive. Your lungs feel big and strong. You reach the clearing and set your axe down carefully in the snow. You do not want the blade to get dull by hitting a rock hidden under the white powder. You look at the space you've cleared. It is time to stop looking and start cutting. The light is very low now, but you know the forest well. You can see the shapes of the trees even in the shadows. You know which ones are pines and which ones are hardwoods like maple or oak. For the walls, the pine is best. For the fire later, the hardwood will be better, because it burns longer and hotter. You stand with the other men for a minute. No one speaks. You all just look at the trees and the snow. You are all thinking about the warmth that will soon be here. You are thinking about the roof that will keep the snow off your heads. You are thinking about the big fire that will dry your wet clothes. The forest is a hard place, but it gives you everything you need if you know how to look for it. You have found the trees. You have found the spot. Now, the real building begins. You feel a shiver, but it is not from the cold. It is from the excitement of starting something new. You are the master of these woods tonight. The great white pines are now lying on the forest floor. They fell with a sound like thunder, shaking the snow from the branches of the trees that are still standing. Now that they are down, the real labor begins. You have to move these massive logs from the place where they grew to the clearing where the shanty will be built. This part of the job is called skidding. It is a slow and heavy task that requires all your strength and the help of some very big friends. You walk over to where the oxen are waiting. In the 1800s, many lumber camps used oxen instead of horses. Oxen are very large, strong cows that are trained to work. They are not fast, but they are very steady. They do not get scared by the deep snow or the loud noises of the forest. You look at them and see the steam rising from their broad backs. The cold air turns their warm breath into big clouds of white mist. They look like gentle giants in the dim light. You can smell the scent of the hay they ate this morning and the earthy smell of their thick fur. You reach into your pocket and pull out your mittens. These are not ordinary mittens. They are made of very thick leather on the outside to stop the rough bark and heavy chains from hurting your hands. Inside, they have a lining made of soft grey wool. These are often called palmer mittens. They're stiff at first, but as you work, they become soft and take the shape of your hands. You pull them on and feel the warmth return to your fingers. You grab a heavy iron chain. It is freezing cold, even through your leather mittens. The metal is grey and dull, with bits of ice stuck in links. To move the logs, you use something called a go devil. This is a simple historical tool that is very clever. It is a small, rough sled made from the fork of a hardwood tree. It looks like a big letter V made of wood. You do not need a fancy factory to make one. You just find the right tree and shape it with your axe. You roll the end of a big log onto the Go Devil and chain it down tight. This keeps the front of the log from digging into the snow and dirt. It makes the heavy wood glide much more easily over the frozen ground. You guide the oxen toward the first log. "Steady now," you say, in a low, calm voice. The animals listen. They move their heavy hooves through the snow, making deep, round holes. You wrap the iron chain around the end of the log. The chain clinks and rattles, a sharp sound that breaks the silence of the woods. You make sure the knot is secure. If the chain slips, the log could slide and hurt someone. You check it twice, feeling the rough bark of the pine beneath the metal. The log is huge. It is much bigger than you are. It seems impossible that it could ever move. But then you give the signal. The oxen lean forward into their wooden yokes. The yoke is a heavy piece of wood that sits across their necks, allowing them to push with their whole bodies. You can see the muscles in their legs bunching up. For a second, nothing happens. The log stays still, held fast by the ice and its own great weight. Then you hear a loud crack. It is the sound of the ice breaking. Slowly, the log begins to move. It groans as it slides over the snow. You walk beside it, keeping an eye on the path. The Go Devil does its job, lifting the front of the log just enough so it can sail over the bumps. You are moving through the skid road. This is a path that has been cleared of bushes and rocks. To make it even slipperier, sometimes the men throw water on the path at night so it turns into a sheet of smooth blue ice. As you walk, you feel the heat of the work. Even though the air is well below freezing, you are starting to feel warm. You unzip the top of your mackinaw coat just a little bit to let some of the steam out. Your heart is beating strongly in your chest. You feel powerful, being able to move something so big through such a wild place. You look at the oxen. Their tails are swishing and their heads are down as they focus on the pull. They are part of the team, just like you. The sun has fully set now. The moon is beginning to rise behind the trees. It is a big, pale circle that turns the snow into a field of glowing silver. You stop for a minute to let the oxen rest. They stand perfectly still, their chests heaving as they catch their breath. This is a moment of deep silence. You look up through the branches of the tall pines. The stars starting to come out, and they look like tiny, bright diamonds scattered on a piece of dark velvet. There is no wind at all now. You can hear the sound of the frozen trees contracting in the cold. Every now and then, a tree will make a loud pop sound, like a small firework. It is just the wood reacting to the frost. You stand there, feeling very small under the vast, starry sky. You are in the middle of a world that is completely wild, yet you feel a strange sense of peace. You are doing honest work, and the forest is providing everything you need. After a few minutes, you continue. The clearing is not far now. You can see the yellow glow of a small lantern near the building site. The other men are there, waiting for the timber. You reach the edge of the clearing and guide the oxen to the pile. You unhook the chain with a quick flick of your wrist. The log stays where it is, a solid piece of the new house. You pat the side of the ox, feeling the warmth of its body through your mitten. "Good job," you whisper. You look at the pile of logs. There are dozens of them now, all lined up and ready. They look like giant pencils waiting to be used. The smell of the fresh-cut wood is very strong here. It is a sweet, resinous smell that reminds you of summer, even though you are standing in 2 feet of snow. You see the sap oozing from the ends of the logs. It looks like golden honey, but it is sticky and thick. It will stay on your clothes for weeks, a badge of your hard work. You take a heavy wooden bar and use it to roll the log into its final place for the night. You have to be careful. A rolling log has a lot of power. You use your weight to push the bar, and the log moves with a heavy, dull thud. Now it is safe. It will not roll away in the night. Your breath is still coming out in big puffs. You look at your boots. They're covered in a crust of frozen snow. You stomp your feet to knock the ice off. The vibration feels good in your tired legs. You have been moving timber for hours, and your body is ready for a rest. But there is a good kind of tiredness in your muscles. It is the feeling of having done something real. You didn't just move wood, you moved the bones of a house. You look back toward the dark forest. You can see the tracks where the log was dragged. It looks like a smooth ribbon of white cutting through the trees. Tomorrow, you will go back and do it again. You will do it until every log you marked is sitting right here. The shanty is still just a dream in your head, but with every log you bring in, it becomes a little more real. You take one last look at the moon, which is now high above the trees. The forest is beautiful in the silver light, but you are looking forward to the time when those logs are stacked high and a roof is over your head. For now, the cold is still your constant companion, but the work keeps you warm. You turn away from the pile and head toward the small fire the men have started, ready for a moment of heat before the next task begins. The snow has been cleared from the center of the camp. You used large wooden shovels to push the white powder away, revealing the ground beneath. In the 1800s, builders did not dig deep holes for a foundation like we do today. Instead, they built right on top of the frozen earth. Because the ground was frozen as hard as a rock, it made a very steady base for the heavy logs. This is a simple historical fact. The winter frost acted like a natural floor of stone, holding up the entire weight of the shanty. You can feel the hardness of the ground through the soles of your boots as you stomp around, making sure the area is level. Now it is time to set the first log. This is a very important moment. This first log is called a sill log. It is the very bottom piece of the wall, and it must be the strongest and straightest of them all. You walk over to the pile of timber you brought in earlier. You look for a pine log that is thick and heavy. You find one that looks perfect. It is long and dark, with the bark still clinging to it in thick, rough patches. You and 3 other men stand on one side of the log. You bend your knees, keeping your back straight. You reach down and grip the wood. The bark is cold and a little bit wet from the melting snow. You can feel the ridges of the tree digging into your leather mittens. "Ready," someone says quietly. On the count of 3, you all lift together. The weight is enormous. It feels like you are trying to lift the earth itself. You can feel the breath catching in your throat and the muscles in your arms growing tight. Slowly, the log rises. You shuffle your feet through the snow, moving toward the cleared space. You set the log down exactly where the first wall will be. It lands with a heavy, muffled thud. A small cloud of snow dust rises into the air around it. You stand up and wipe the sweat from your forehead, even though the air is freezing. The work is hard, but it feels good to see the first piece of your home in place. This log is the start of everything. It is the line between the wild forest and the place where you will soon be safe and warm. To make sure the log stays still, you use a special tool called a broadaxe. A broadaxe is a very large, heavy axe with a blade that is flat on one side. It is much bigger than the felling axe you use to cut down the tree. It is made for hewing, which is a simple word for making a round log flat. You hold the heavy handle and swing the blade downward. Thwack! The sharp metal bites into the curved side of the log. You are chopping away the round part of the wood, so the log has a flat bottom. This helps it sit firmly on the frozen ground without rolling. You work slowly. You do not want to rush and make a mistake. You can see the pale, cream-colored wood hiding under the dark bark. It looks fresh and clean. Tiny chips of wood fly through the air and land in the snow, looking like little orange sparks against the white. The smell of fresh pine fills your nose again, stronger than ever. It is a sweet, sappy smell that makes you think of the life inside the tree. Even though the tree is no longer growing, the wood still feels alive in your hands. As you work, the forest seems to grow even more silent. The other men are busy with their own tasks, but everyone is moving quietly. There is a sense of respect for the work. You stop for a moment and lean on the handle of your broadaxe. You look down at the log. It is now flat on the bottom, resting perfectly against the hard earth. This is a moment of atmospheric reflection. You look at the log and then out at the hundreds of trees still standing in the dark. You think about how this one tree has changed. It was once a tall, swaying giant in the wind, and now it is the beginning of a flaw. The forest is giving itself to you so that you can survive the winter. You feel a deep thankfulness for the wood. You listen to the silence of the woods. It is so quiet that you can hear the tiny sound of a single piece of bark falling onto the snow. The world feels very old and very big, and you feel lucky to be a small part of it. You move to the next corner to set the second sill log. This one will be at a right angle to the first, forming a corner. You repeat the process, lifting and carrying the heavy wood. Your shoulders are starting to ache, but it is a dull, steady ache that you can ignore. You focus on the feeling of the wood and the rhythm of your breath. You notice a small detail on your clothing. One of the brass buttons on your mackin or coat has a little bit of ice on it. You rub it with your thumb, and the ice melts away, showing the shiny metal beneath. It is a tiny bit of brightness in the grey light of the evening. These small things matter when you are out in the wild. A sturdy button, a warm scarf, a sharp axe, these are the things that keep you going. You look at the 4 sill logs now lying on the ground. They form a large square. This square is the footprint of the shanty. It looks small compared to the vast forest, but it is plenty of space for 40 men to huddle together. You walk around the square, stepping over the logs. You check to see if they are level. In the 1800s, you didn't have fancy tools to check if things were straight. You often used a plumb bob, which is just a heavy weight on a string. If the string hangs straight down, you know your wall is upright. For the floor logs, you just use your eyes and the feeling in your feet. If the log doesn't rock when you stand on it, it is good. The light is almost gone now. The moon is higher, and the shadows of the trees are dark blue. The frozen ground is starting to sparkle in the moonlight, as if it is covered in tiny diamonds. You can feel the frost tightening its grip on the world. The wood of the logs feels even harder now as the moisture inside them begins to freeze. You take a heavy wooden mallet and tap the end of the log, nudging it just an inch to the left. The sound is a loud clack that echoes through the trees. Now it is perfect. The foundation is set. The base of your home is firm. You feel a great sense of satisfaction. You have turned a patch of wild snow into a place with a purpose. You stand in the center of the square you have made. You look up at the stars, which are now shining brightly. The Great Bear constellation is right above you. It looks like it is watching over the camp. You feel a cold breeze on your neck. Be don't mind. You have laid the first logs. You have started the fight against the winter. Tomorrow, the walls will go up, but tonight you have a foundation. You take one last deep breath of the pine-scented air and prepare for the next step. The work is long, but the house is growing. You stand at the corner where 2 of the big sill logs meet. Now that the foundation is set, you must find a way to make the walls grow tall without them falling over. In the 1800s, lumberjacks did not have boxes of metal nails or heavy bolts. Nails were very expensive and hard to carry into the deep forest. Instead, they used a clever way of cutting the wood so the logs would lock together like the fingers of 2 hands joined together. This is a simple historical fact. A well-built shanty used the weight of the trees and the shape of the cuts to stay strong against the winter wind. No glue or metal was needed to keep your home standing. You reach into the pocket of your thick-walled trousers and pull out a small tool. This is your scribe. It is a simple piece of metal, often just 2 sharp points held together by a screw. It looks a bit like the tool you might use in school to draw a perfect circle. In the woods, this is a vital microhistory detail. You use the scribe to mark the wood. You hold one point on the bottom log and the other point on the top log. As you move it along, it scratches a line into the bar. This line tells you exactly how much wood you need to cut away so the 2 logs fit together perfectly, leaving no gaps for the cold air to crawl through. You pick up your sharp axe again. You feel the weight of it, the solid and familiar comfort in your hands. You are going to make a saddle notch. This is a cut that looks like the seat you would put on a horse. You begin by swinging the axe in short, controlled strokes. Chop, chop, chop. You are not trying to cut the log in half. You are just carving out a hollow, rounded shape near the end of the timber. The wood of the white pine is soft compared to other trees, but it is still frozen. Every time the blade hits the wood, you feel a vibration travel up the wooden handle and into your arms. It is a dull, rhythmic thumping that you can feel in your elbows and shoulders. The sound is different now than when you were felling the trees. In the open air, the axe made a sharp crack. Here, near the ground and the other logs, the sound is deeper. It is a heavy thud that seems to go right down into the frozen earth. You watch the wood chips fly. They are small and curved, like the scales of a giant fish. They land on the white snow, making a circle of pale orange around your boots. The contrast of the fresh wood against the snow is very pretty. You stop for a minute to catch your breath. You look at the notch you have made. It is smooth and clean. You run your gloved hand over the inside of the cut. Even through the leather of your mittens, you can feel that the wood is damp and cold. The smell of the sap is very strong now. It is sticky and smells like the very heart of the forest. Some people say the smell of pine helps you breathe better, and you find yourself taking deep, slow breaths. The air is so cold it feels like it is cleaning your lungs. You look over at the other corners of the square. Other men are doing the same work. You can hear the sounds of 3 other axes hitting wood at the same time. Thud, 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 thud. It sounds like a slow wooden heartbeat echoing through the clearing. Now comes the hard part. You must lift the next log and see if it fits into the notch you have carved. You and your partner grab the ends of a new log. It is heavy, and you have to move carefully so you do not slip on the icy ground. You lift it up and rest it across the corner. You watch as the round belly of the top log settles into the saddle. You cut in the bottom log. It doesn't fit quite right yet. It wobbles just a little bit. You take the log off and set it aside. You take your axe and shave off just a tiny bit more wood. You are like a giant carpenter, working with massive pieces of timber instead of small boards. You work with care and patience. In the shanty, the corners are the most important part. If the corners are strong, the whole house is strong. You think about the storms that will come in January and February. You think about the wind that will howl and try to push these walls over. Every swing of your axe is a way of saying no to the winter. You are building a fortress of wood. You lift the log again. This time, when you set it down, you hear a wonderful sound. It is a solid, muffled clunk. The log does not wobble. It sits perfectly in the notch. It is locked in place. You could push on it with all your might, and it would not budge. You feel a great sense of pride. You didn't use a single nail, yet you have joined two massive pieces of the forest together, so they can never be moved. You stand back and look at your work. You are standing in the middle of the dark woods, with the moon high above, and you have made something with your own two hands. You take a moment for atmospheric silence. You stop moving. You stop breathing for just a second. The axes of the other men have stopped too. In this moment, there is no sound at all. The forest is perfectly still. You look at the way the moonlight hits the fresh cuts in the wood. They glow like silver. You look at the way the snow has started to cover the wood chips you just made. It is as if the forest is trying to tuck the wood back into bed. You feel a deep connection to the trees and the land. You are not an intruder here. You are a builder. You are using what the earth gave you to make a place of safety. The silence is heavy and cold, but it is not scary. It is a quiet, respectful peace. You shake the snow off your hat. Your head is warm because of the work, but the rest of the world is freezing. You see a thin layer of frost starting to grow on the top of the log you just laid. It looks like tiny white hairs standing up. You know that as the night goes on, the moisture in the wood will freeze even harder, locking your notch even tighter. The cold is actually helping you build. It is the invisible glue of the North Woods. You move to the next corner to start the next notch. You have many more logs to go. The walls will rise, one layer at a time, until they are as tall as your shoulders. You think about the rhythm of the work. Mark, chop, lift, fit. Mark, chop, lift, fit. Mark, chop, lift, fit. It is a simple life, but it is a good one. There are no complicated problems here. There is only the wood, the axe, and the goal of staying warm. You look at your mittens. The leather is getting dark from the sap and the damp wood. They're becoming more flexible, moving easily with your fingers. You can feel the warmth of your hands inside the wool lining. You are lucky to have good gear. You think of the men who came before you, who might not have had such good coats or boots. You feel a sense of honor in continuing their work. You are the watchman of this night, and your watch is being kept with the sharp edge of an axe and the strength of your arms. You take another log and begin to mark it with a scribe. The scratch it makes is a thin, pale line on the dark bark. You follow the line with your eyes, planning your next cut. The night is long and the forest is vast, but you are not worried. You have your notch, you have your wood, and you have the stars to guide you. You swing the axe again, and the sound of the wooden heartbeat returns to the clearing. Thud, thud, thud. The shanty is growing, one corner at a time. The walls are beginning to rise. You can see the shape of your winter home growing taller against the dark background of the trees. Each log you add makes the square feel more like a real building and less like a pile of timber. You and the other men are working in a steady rhythm now. The cold is still there, biting at your ears, but the heavy work keeps your blood moving fast. You feel a glow of warmth inside your mackinaw coat that has nothing to do with the fire. It is the warmth of effort. To get the higher logs onto the wall, you cannot just lift them by hand anymore. They are too heavy and the wall is getting too high. You use a very clever trick with two long slanted logs called skids. You lean these skids against the wall to make a ramp. Then you and your partner use a special tool to roll the logs up the ramp. This tool is a microhistory treasure called a canthook. It is a long wooden handle, usually made of strong maple wood, with a heavy metal ring and a big swinging iron hook at the end. You pull the hook back, let it bite into the bark of the log, and then use the long handle as a lever. It gives you the strength of 3 men. You can feel the power in your arms as the heavy pine log rolls slowly up the skids, inch by inch. As you work, you notice how the walls are being built. In the 1800s, lumberjacks did not build their shanties with high, soaring ceilings. They built the walls quite low, often only about 6 or 7 feet high. This is a simple historical fact. A low building is much easier to keep warm than a tall one. All the heat from the fire stays down where the men are sleeping, rather than floating up into a high roof where it would be wasted. You look at the wall and see that it is already up to your chest. It feels like the forest is reaching out to wrap you in a wooden hug. The logs are thick and solid, and you know that once they are all stacked, no wind will be able to move them. The sound of the work has changed. When you were on the ground, the sounds were muffled by the deep snow. Now that you are working on the wooden walls, every movement makes a sound that rings out through the forest. When a log settles into place, it makes a deep, hollow thump. It sounds like a giant drum being hit once. The metal hook of your cant hook makes a sharp clink every time it hits the wood. You listen to these sounds and find they have a music of their own. It is the music of a house being born. You take a moment to look at the texture of the logs. They are not smooth like the wood in a modern house. They are covered in rough, dark bark. You can see bits of green moss clinging to some of the logs, frozen solid like tiny emeralds. There are drops of sap that have turned into hard amber beads in the cold. You touch one with your thumb, it is hard as glass. The wood feels ancient and strong. You think about how these trees stood in the wind for 100 years, and now they are standing for you. Your partner is a man you have worked with for a long time. You don't need to talk to each other to know what to do. You both grab your cant hooks and pull together. You can see the steam from his breath mixing with yours in the air between you. It looks like a little cloud of white smoke. You feel a deep sense of friendship in this shared work. You are all building this together, and you will all share the warmth together when it is finished. The moonlight is very bright now. It reflects off the white snow and the pale, freshly cut ends of the logs. Everything is silver and black. You stop for a moment and lean against the wall you have built. This is a moment of atmospheric reflection. You look out past the clearing into the deep, dark heart of the woods. The trees there are so thick that the moonlight cannot reach the ground. It looks like a sea of black ink. You realize how far you are from the rest of the world. There are no roads here, no cities, and no other people for miles and miles. It is just you, your friends, and the trees. You feel a small shiver, but it is not because you are cold. It is because the forest feels so big and powerful. You feel a deep respect for the wild land. You are small, but you are clever, and you are building a place where the wild cannot get in. The silence is so heavy, you can almost feel it pressing against your skin. It is a cold, clean silence that makes your thoughts feel very clear. You turn back to the work. You need one more log to finish this layer of the wall. You find a good one in the pile. It is a bit smaller than the others, which is good because it will be easier to handle. You guide it toward the skids. You can feel the weight of the cant hook in your hand. The wooden handle is smooth and cold, polished by the many hours of work your hands have done. You set the hook into the wood. Thuck. The metal point goes deep into the bark. You and your partner push. The log groans as it moves up the ramp. You can feel the friction of the wood against wood. It is a slow, steady climb. You use your legs to push, feeling the strength in your thighs and calves. Your boots grip the frozen ground, finding little bits of ice to push against. Slowly, the log reaches the top. With one last heave, you roll it into place. It sits perfectly on top of the log below it. You can see the tiny gap between them, which you will fill later to keep the drafts out. But for now, the wall is a solid, heavy barrier against the world. You look at your hands. Even through your leather mittens, you can feel the vibration of the work. Your fingers are a little bit stiff, so you ball them into fists inside the wall lining to warm them up. You look at the sky and see that the stars have moved. The night is moving forward, and so are you. You have raised the walls, and the shanty is starting to look like a home. The air is getting even colder now. You can feel the hair inside your nose starting to freeze with every breath. It is a strange, prickly feeling. But the work is almost done for this section. You look at the 4 walls. They are even and strong. They are low, just as they should be, to keep the heat of the fire close to your body. You think about the roof that will soon go on top. You think about the door you will cut. You feel a sense of peace. You are doing what men have done for hundreds of years. You are making a shelter in the wilderness. You take your cant hook and lean it carefully against the wall. You don't want to leave it in the snow where the metal might get buried and lost. You pat the top log of the wall, feeling the rough bark one last time. It feels like a promise of safety. You have used the trees to build a wall, and the wall will protect you from the forest. You take a final look at the moon, which is now sitting right at the top of a tall pine tree. It looks like a giant lantern hanging in the branches. You take a deep, slow breath of the freezing air and prepare for the next task. The walls are up, and the night is quiet. You are one step closer to the warmth. You stand back and look at the solid wooden square you have built. The walls are now high enough that you cannot easily step over them anymore. It feels like a real building now, a sturdy wooden box sitting in the middle of the white snow. But there is one problem. There is no way to get inside. It is a house without an entrance. You need to cut a hole in these heavy logs to make a doorway. This is a very important task because the door is the only way for you to enter your place of safety, and it is also the only place where the freezing wind can try to get in. In the 1800s, lumberjacks almost always built their door on the side of the shanty that faced away from the wind. This is a simple historical fact. By putting the door on the sheltered side, the men could open it without a giant blast of snow blowing straight onto their beds. You look at the trees and the way the snow has piled up against their trunks. You can see that the wind usually blows from the north. So, you decide to put your door on the south wall. This will be the warmest spot, where the sun might hit the logs for a few hours in the middle of the day. To make the door, you need a different kind of tool. You reach for the cross-cut saw. As we mentioned before, many men called this the misery whip. It is a long, thin blade of steel, about 6 feet long, with a wooden handle at each end. The teeth of the saw are large and very sharp. They are shaped like little mountain peaks, designed to pull the sawdust out of the cut so the blade does not get stuck. You and your partner stand on opposite sides of the wall. You place the blade against the top log. You begin to pull. Shush, 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 shush. The sound is very different from the loud thud of the axe. It is a soft rhythmic scratching sound. You pull the saw toward you, and then your partner pulls it back toward him. You do not need to push down hard, you just let the weight of the heavy steel blade do the work. You can feel the vibration of the metal teeth biting into the frozen pine. It feels like a buzz in your hands, a steady shaking that goes all the way up your arms. As you saw, a fine pale dust begins to fall. It looks like very dry sand. This is the sawdust, the tiny bits of the tree that the saw is chewing away. It piles up on your boots and on the snow, smelling like fresh wood and cold winter air. You watch the blade disappear into the log. You are cutting straight down through the layers of timber you worked so hard to stack. It feels a bit strange to be cutting through your new walls, but you know it is the only way to make a home. The work is very tiring. You have to keep a steady pace. If you pull too fast, the thin blade might bend or buckle. If you pull too slow, it might get caught in the sap. You and your partner move like a machine, back and forth, back and forth. You watch the steam rising from your partner's mouth. He is focused on the rhythm, just like you. You feel a deep connection to him. In the woods, you are never really alone. Every job is done together. You finish the first vertical cut. Now you move over about 3 feet and start the second cut. These 2 lines will be the sides of your door. You repeat the process. Shush, 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 shush. The rhythm is almost like a lullaby. If you were not so cold, the sound might make you feel sleepy. The repetitive motion of your arms makes your shoulders feel heavy and warm. You look at the dark forest behind you, and then back at the silver blade of the saw. The metal reflects the moonlight, flashing with every stroke. Once the 2 cuts are finished, the sections of the logs between the lines are ready to come out. You take a heavy wooden mallet and hit the wood. Bang! The short pieces of log fall inward, landing on the ground inside the shanty. Now, there is a tall, narrow gap in the wall. You have made a doorway. You step through the opening for the very first time. It feels special. You are no longer standing in the forest. You are standing in your house. Even though there is no roof yet, the walls block the wind. It feels a little bit warmer already, just because the air is still. You look at the edges of the logs where you just cut. They are smooth and show the rings of the trees. You can see how old the trees were by counting the thin lines in the wood. Some of these pines have been growing since before you were born. You feel a sense of respect for the wood. It has spent a lifetime reaching for the sun, and now it is keeping you safe from the snow. Now you must think about the door itself. You will not have a fancy door with a metal lock. You use a microhistory detail called a latch string. This is a simple piece of leather or strong cord that goes through a small hole in the door. On the inside, it is tied to a wooden bar. When you pull the string from the outside, it lifts the bar so you can walk in. At night, you pull the string inside the house. This means no one can open the door from the outside. It is a simple way to feel safe. You touch the spot where the string will go, imagining the feeling of pulling it to let yourself into the warmth. The door itself is made of thick planks of cedar or pine held together with wooden pegs. It is heavy and solid when you eventually hang it on its hinges, which are often just pieces of thick leather. It will close with a deep wooden clump. It is a sound that means the day is over and the world is shut out. You stand in the new doorway and look out. This is a moment of atmospheric reflection. From here the doorway acts like a frame for a picture. You see the white clearing, the dark line of the trees, and the bright moon hanging in the sky. The world outside looks beautiful, but it also looks very cold and very harsh. You realize that this small opening is the bridge between two worlds. Outside is the wild forest where the wolves howl and the frost bites. Inside will be the fire, the food, and the sleep. You feel a sense of relief. You have made a way to go from the cold into the warm. You stand perfectly still for a minute, watching a small owl fly silently across the clearing. It doesn't make a sound. The silence of the night is so deep, it feels like it has a weight of its own. You notice that the bottom of the doorway is a bit high. In the 1800s, the bottom part of a door, the threshold, was often kept high on purpose. This was to keep the deep snow from blowing inside every time someone opened a door. You have to lift your foot quite high to step over it. It feels like a little bit of extra protection, a wooden fence to keep the winter at bay. You run your hand over the rough-cut wood of the door frame. You can feel the tiny splinters and the sticky sap. Your leather mittens are now covered in sawdust. You clap your hands together and a little cloud of wood dust rises into the air. It smells wonderful. It is the smell of progress. The other men are starting to bring in the materials for the roof, but you stay in the doorway for a moment longer. You think about how many times you will walk through this gap in the coming months. You will walk through it in the dark of the morning when your bones are cold. You will walk through it in the evening, tired and hungry, looking for the light of the fire. This door is more than just a hole in the wall. It is an invitation to survive. You look at your partner and nod. The task is done. The doorway is ready. The shanty is no longer a trap. It is a home with a way in. You feel a quiet joy in your heart. The hardest parts of the building are behind you. Now you just need a roof over your head to truly be safe. You take one last look at the stars through the gap in the logs and then step back out into the snow to help with the next part of the work. The night is still young and there is much more to do before you can rest. You look up at the empty space where the sky meets the tops of your wooden walls. The stars are beautiful, but they do not keep out the snow. To survive the deep forest winter, you need a roof that is strong enough to hold the weight of a heavy storm. In the 1800s, lumberjacks did not use flatboards for their roofs. Instead, they used the bark and the wood of the cedar tree. This is a simple historical fact. Cedar wood is very special because it does not rot easily when it gets wet, and its bark can be peeled off in long, wide strips that act like natural shingles. You and the other men begin to prepare the rafters. These are the long, thinner logs that will stretch from one wall to the other to hold up the roof. You don't have a ladder, so you use the skids you used earlier to climb up. You move carefully. Your boots are heavy and the logs can be slippery with frost. You feel the cold wind blowing more strongly now that you are higher up. It whistles past your ears and makes the wool of your hat tickle your forehead. To make the roof waterproof, you use a microhistory detail called scoops. To make a scoop, you take a cedar log and split it right down the middle with your axe and a wooden wedge. Then you hollow out the inside so the log looks like a long wooden trough or a giant gutter. You lay these hollow out logs across the rafters with the hollow side facing up. Then you place another layer of logs on top, but this time with the hollow side facing down, covering the gaps between the bottom ones. It looks like a series of interlocking U-shapes. This clever design lets the rain and melting snow run down the channels and off the edge of the building, keeping the inside of the shanty bone dry. The work is slow and requires a lot of balance. You stand on the top of the wall, reaching out to guide a heavy cedar scoop into place. You can feel the rough texture of the cedar bark through your mittens. It feels different from the pine. It is stringy and soft, almost like thick paper. The smell is wonderful too. It is a sweet, spicy scent that reminds you of a clean cupboard. As you move, you have to be very mindful of your feet. One slip could mean a fall into the deep snow or onto the hard frozen ground inside. You focus on the rhythm of your movements, keeping your weight low and steady. As the roof begins to cover the square, the light inside the shanty starts to change. The bright moonlight is blocked out, and the interior of the building becomes dark and mysterious. You look down from your high perch and see the shadows of the other men moving below. It feels like you are building a giant wooden cave. You are closing yourselves off from the rest of the world, creating a small space that belongs only to you and your crew. You take a moment for atmospheric silence. You are sitting on the very top of the roof, looking out over the forest. From up here, you can see much further. The sea of trees seems to go on forever, a vast carpet of dark green and white. You can see the frozen river in the distance, blowing like a silver ribbon under the moon. There is no sound at all except for the very faint sighing of the wind in the treetops. You feel like the only person left on Earth. The silence is so deep that it feels like it has a physical presence, like a heavy, cold blanket. You realize how much work it takes just to stay alive in a place like this. But you also feel a great sense of peace. You are not fighting the forest. You are using the gifts it gave you to make a home. You take a deep breath, and the freezing air feels like ice in your throat, but it makes you feel strong and awake. You reach for the next cedar scoop. Your arms are tired, and your shoulders feel like they are made of lead. But you don't stop. You know that if a storm comes tonight, you will be glad for every minute of hard work you did. You guide the log into place, listening for the soft clack as it settles against its neighbor. You use a heavy wooden mallet to tap it into the perfect position. The sound of the mallet is a dull, solid noise that feels very final. The roof is not just for keeping out the rain. It is also for keeping in the heat. In the 1800s, lumberjacks knew that heat rises. By making a thick roof of cedar and bark, you are creating a lid for your wooden box. Once the fire is lit, the warmth will hit the roof and bounce back down toward you, keeping everyone cozy during the long, dark nights. You think about the night shift that will soon begin the hours of sleeping and resting while the wind howls outside. You notice a small bird, a chickadee, landing on a branch just a few feet away from you. It is a tiny ball of grey and black feathers. It looks at you with a bright black eye, seemingly unafraid. It lets out a tiny, cheerful chirp before flying away into the shadows. You smile to yourself. Even in this frozen world, there is life and courage. If that tiny bird can survive the winter, surely you and your 40 friends can too. You finish the last row of scoops. The roof is now complete, except for a very important gap you have left in the very middle. You look at the dark wood and the silver moonlight, reflecting off the frost that is already starting to form on the cedar. The building looks solid and permanent. It looks like it grew right out of the ground. You climb down the skids, your feet finding the familiar notches in the wood. When you reach the ground, you step inside the shanty through the doorway you cut earlier. It is very dark inside now, and very quiet. The wind is gone. The snow is gone. You are surrounded by the smell of pine and cedar. You look up and see a single square of starlight through the hole you left in the roof. It looks like a beautiful, glowing jewel. This is your home. You have built a roof with your own hands, and tonight, for the first time in weeks, you will sleep with a ceiling over your head. You feel a deep sense of accomplishment. The forest is still there, just on the other side of the logs, but for now, you are safe. You stand in the very center of the dark shanty and look straight up. Even though you have worked so hard to build a roof that keeps out the snow, you have left a large square opening right in the middle. This is not a mistake. In the 1800s, this was a vital part of every lumberjack home. It is the smoke hole, because the shanty does not have a stone chimney like a house in the city. The smoke from the great fire needs a way to escape. This is a simple historical fact. Without this hole, the room would fill with thick grey smoke in minutes, making it impossible to see or breathe. The smoke hole is the lungs of the shanty, letting the building breathe while you sleep. You look at the edges of the opening. You have lined the hole with extra pieces of cedar and flat stones to make sure the sparks from the fire do not catch the roof on fire. This is a microhistory detail called a curb. It is a wooden frame that sits a little bit higher than the rest of the roof. Like a small square fence, you can see the stars twinkling through this gap. It is a strange feeling to be inside a house, but still be able to see the night sky. The opening looks like a dark window into the universe. The air inside the shanty is very still, but you can see a tiny bit of frost falling through the smoke hole. It looks like silver dust drifting down in the moonlight. You know that as soon as the fire is lit, the heat will rush toward this opening, pushing the cold air out. It is a constant battle between the warmth of the fire and the chill of the forest. You reach out and touch the wall. The logs are cold, but they are solid. You feel a sense of protection. The smoke hole is a small price to pay for having a fire right in the middle of your living room. You notice how quiet it is in here. Outside, the wind might be whistling through the pines, but in here, the thick logs soak up all the noise. It is a heavy, peaceful kind of silence. You take a moment for atmospheric reflection. You stand perfectly still in the dark, listening to the sound of your own breathing. You think about the night shift and how this hole will be the only thing connecting you to the outside world once the door is shut. You feel like you are in a wooden bubble, safe and hidden away from the world. The silence is so deep that you can almost hear the frost growing on the roof outside. You look at the ground beneath the smoke hole. This is where the Camboose, or the Great Fire Pit, will soon be built. You can imagine the flames leaping up toward the sky. You can almost feel the heat on your face already. You know that the smoke hole is more than just a gap. It is a promise of warmth. It is the reason you can have a fire inside at all. You feel a sense of cleverness. The men who designed these shanties knew exactly what they were doing. They knew how to work with the nature of fire and the nature of the cold. The light from the moon shifts slightly and a beam of silver light hits the floor. It shows the rough earth and the bits of wood left over from the building. You realize that the smoke hole also acts as a natural clock. During the day, the sun will move across the opening, and you will know exactly what time it is by where the light lands on the floor. In the woods, you don't need a ticking clock on the wall. You just need the sky and a hole in your roof. You pull your mackinaw coat tighter around you. Even with the walls and the roof, the shanty is still very cold because the fire hasn't been started yet. You look up at the smoke hole one last time. A large white owl flies across the opening, its wings making no sound at all. For a split second, it blocks out the stars. It feels like a good sign, a guardian of the woods checking in on your new home. You feel a deep connection to the forest. You are living in its heart now, and the smoke hole is your way of staying in touch with the wind and the stars. You turn your attention to the floor. Now that the roof is on and the smoke hole is ready, it is time to build the heart of the home. You need to make a place for the fire that won't burn the whole shanty down. You start to look for the stones you gathered earlier. The work is never truly done, but each step brings you closer to that first moment of warmth. You step over a pile of cedar bark, your boots making a soft scratching sound on the frozen ground. The shanty is ready for its fire. You are ready to stop being a builder and start being a dweller of the woods. You stand in the exact center of the shanty, directly beneath the square opening in the roof. The ground here is frozen hard, but you cannot simply build a fire on the dirt. You need to build the heart of the shanty, the camboose. In the 1800s, the camboose was a massive raised fire pit made of sand, earth, and heavy timber. This is a simple historical fact. The word camboose comes from a French word for a small room or a ship's kitchen. Here in the woods, it is the giant stove that never goes out. It is the only source of heat for 40 men, and it sits right in the middle of the room so that everyone gets a share of the warmth. You begin by bringing in thick, heavy logs to form a frame. You lay them in a large square about 6 or 8 feet across. This frame is a microhistory detail called the hearth bed. Once the wooden frame is set, you and the other men fill the inside with layers of sand and heavy clay that you dug up before the ground froze too deep. You pack the sand down with your heavy boots, stomping on it until it is as solid as a stone floor. This thick layer of earth acts as a shield. It keeps the heat of the fire from reaching the wooden floor or the logs underneath. Without this bed of sand, the fire would slowly eat its way into the ground or burn the very house you just built. As you work, you can feel the weight of the sand in your shovel. It is heavy and cold, and bits of it stick to your mittens. You use a flat piece of wood to smooth the top of the sand until it is perfectly level. You look at the square you have made. It is a stage, waiting for the main character, the fire, to arrive. You notice the smell of the damp earth and the dry sand. It is a heavy, dusty smell that mixes with the scent of the pine logs. It feels like you are bringing a piece of the summer ground into your winter home. The shanty is very dark now, but the pale sand of the camboose reflects the little bit of starlight coming through the smoke hole above. You take a moment for atmospheric silence. You lean on your shovel and look at the empty fire pit. The air is so still you can hear the tiny tink-tink of ice crystals forming on the walls. You think about how this one spot will soon be the most important place in the world to you. It will be where you cook your salt pork, where you dry your freezing clothes, and where you tell stories to keep the loneliness away. The silence is deep and heavy, like the sand at your feet. It is a peaceful moment of waiting before the work of the winter truly begins. You look at the corners of the camboose. You have placed 4 sturdy poles at each corner, reaching up toward the roof. Across these poles you hang a long iron bar or a heavy wooden pole. This is where the big cooking pots will hang. In the woods, there are no fancy ovens. Everything is cooked right over the open flames of the camboose. You touch the iron bar. It is freezing cold, and the metal feels rough under your thumb. You can imagine the heavy black pots swinging there, filled with bubbling beans and tea. You notice a small detail on the edge of the wooden frame. You have carved a small notch into the wood, where you can rest your feet while you sit by the fire later. It is a tiny bit of comfort in a hard world. These small things, a smooth place to sit, a sturdy frame for the fire, are what make the shanty feel like a home instead of just a camp. You brush some sawdust off the edge of the frame, feeling the solidness of the wood. The camboose is finished now. It is a great raised island of earth in the middle of your wooden sea. You look up at the smoke hole one more time, making sure it is lined up perfectly with the pit. The alignment is important. If it is off, the smoke will wander around the room instead of heading straight out into the night. Everything looks right. The frame is strong, the sand is deep, and the pot bar is ready. You feel a sense of relief. The building of the shanty's body is done, and now you have built its heart. You are tired, and your back aches from lifting the heavy sand, but you feel a deep satisfaction. You have created a place for fire. Tomorrow you will bring in the wood to start the first blaze. But tonight, the camboose stands ready. You take a deep breath of the cold air, knowing that soon this room will be filled with the most beautiful thing in the North Woods, heat. You step back toward the doorway, leaving the quiet camboose to wait in the dark. The night shift is almost over, and the first fire is calling. You stand back and look at your work, but you notice something. Even though the logs are stacked tight and the roof is on, the shanty is not yet a warm place. There are small, thin gaps between the logs. In the 1800s, it was impossible to make every log perfectly flat. These tiny cracks are like open windows for the freezing winter wind. If you don't close them, the heat from your fire will leak out, and the night shift will be a very cold one. You need to do a job called chinking. This is a simple historical fact. Chinking is the process of filling the gaps between logs to make the walls airtight and waterproof. You pick up a wooden bucket. Inside is a mixture of mud, clay, and bits of dried grass. Sometimes, lumberjacks used a special kind of moss that grows on the north side of trees. This is a microhistory detail. This moss is called Old Man's Beard because it is long and grey. It is very soft and acts like a natural piece of wool. You take a handful of the damp moss and mud. It feels squishy and cold in your hand, but you don't mind. You push the moss deep into the cracks between the logs. You use a small, flat piece of wood to poke it in tight, making sure there are no holes left. As you work your way around the room, you can feel the shanty changing. Before, you could hear the wind whistling through the cracks, a high-pitched sound that made the hair on your neck stand up. Now, as you fill the gaps, the room becomes much quieter. It feels like you are wrapping the whole building in a thick, warm scarf. You follow the line of each log, pressing the mud and moss into every little space. The smell of the damp earth is very strong, mixing with the sharp scent of the pine logs. It is a clean, natural smell that reminds you of the forest floor in the autumn. You move slowly, kneeling in the snow near the bottom logs, and then reaching high for the ones above your head. Your fingers are getting a bit messy, and the mud is starting to dry on your leather mittens. You stop for a moment to rest your back. This is a moment of atmospheric reflection. You look at the wall you have just finished. The dark grey moss and the brown mud make a beautiful pattern against the golden white wood of the pine. It looks like the forest itself is helping you build your home. You listen to the silence. Now that the cracks are filled, the silence is even deeper. It is a heavy, solid quiet that makes you feel very safe. You are inside, and the winter is outside. For the first time, the shanty feels like a real fortress. You can no longer see the silver moonlight peeking through the walls. The only light comes from the smoke hole above. You notice a small frozen leaf stuck in the mud you are using. It is a maple leaf, brown and crisp. You leave it there, pressing it into the gap between two logs. It is like a little decoration for your wall, a tiny piece of the forest caught in your house. These small details make the shanty feel more like a home. You think about the 40 men who will soon be crowded in here because the walls are now airtight, the warmth from their bodies, and the fire will stay trapped inside. It will be a cozy place, even when the temperature outside drops far below zero. You finish the last corner of the room. You have used many buckets of mud and moss, but the walls are now solid. You run your hand along the logs, feeling the bumpy texture of the chinking. It feels firm and strong. You know that, as the night goes on, the mud will freeze and become as hard as stone. This will lock the moss in place for the whole winter. The wind can push as hard as it wants, but it will not find a way in. You look at your boots, which are covered in bits of moss and dried mud. You stomp them on the ground to clean them off. The sound is a dull, muffled thud. You feel a great sense of pride. The walls are up, the door is cut, the roof is on, and now the walls are sealed. You have taken the raw materials of the forest, the wood, the earth, and the moss, and turned them into a place where a man can survive. You take a deep breath of the still air. It is cold, yes, but it is no longer moving. You have won the first battle against the winter wind. You are ready for the next step in making this wooden cave into a home. You stand on the hard, frozen earth inside your new shanty. The walls are sealed, the roof is on, and the Camboose fire pit is ready. But you cannot live on the bare dirt. The ground is like a block of ice, and it would sap the heat right out of your body if you tried to sit or sleep on it. You need a floor that is soft, warm, and dry. In the 1800s, lumberjacks did not have rugs or carpets from a shop. Instead, they brought the forest floor inside. This is a simple historical fact. The Balsam fir tree was known as the lumberjack's mattress because its branches were the softest and best-smelling bedding in the North Woods. You step back out through the doorway and into the moonlight. You are looking for a specific kind of tree. You pass by the tall white pines and the rough bark spruces. Then you find what you need. The balsam fir is a smaller tree with bark that has little bubbles of sap on it. You reach out and touch the needles. Unlike the spruce, which has sharp needles that poke your skin, the balsam needles are flat and soft. If you rub them between your fingers, they release a beautiful sweet smell that is a mix of orange peel and pine. You take your small hatchet and begin to cut the ends of the branches. You only want the tips, the small bushy ends about the length of your hand. You gather a huge pile of these green branches. They are light and bouncy. You carry a big bundle of them back into the shanty, cradling them in your arms like a giant green pillow. As you step inside, the smell follows you. It is so strong and fresh that it almost makes you forget how cold the air is. You drop the bundle in the corner and go back for more. It takes hundreds and hundreds of branches to cover the floor of a large shanty. You and the other men work together, bringing in the green harvest of the woods. Now you begin the task of laying the floor. This is a microhistory detail called feathering the floor. You do not just throw the branches down in a messy pile. You start at the back wall and work your way toward the door. You take a branch and push the broken wooden end into the soft dirt or wedge it between other branches. You make sure the soft green needles are pointing up and slightly toward the front of the room. Then you lay the next branch on top of the first one, like the shingles on a roof or the feathers on a bird's wing. You move across the floor on your knees. You can feel the springy branches beneath you. Every time you press down, the balsam releases more of its scent. The floor is becoming thick and deep. You keep adding layers until the green carpet is nearly a foot deep. This thick layer of needles and twigs does something very clever. It creates a space of dead air between you and the frozen ground. This air acts as a blanket, keeping the cold of the earth away from your body and keeping the heat of the fire near the surface. The work is slow and steady. You find a rhythm in the shingling of the branches. Tuck, layer, press. Tuck, layer, press. Your leather mittens are now covered in sticky balsam sap. It is clear and smells wonderful, but it makes everything you touch stick to your hands. You don't mind. In the woods, the smell of sap is the smell of a job well done. You look back at the part of the floor you have finished. It looks like a soft green sea. It is much more beautiful than any wooden floor in a city house. You reach the area where the beds will be. In a shanty, the bed is just a long wooden platform covered in a very thick layer of these same balsam boughs. You spend extra time here making sure the branches are extra thick and soft. You want the mattress to be as deep as possible. You think about the night shift and how good it will feel to lay your tired bones down on this springy green bed. After a long day of swinging an axe and pulling a saw, this will feel like the most expensive bed in the world. As you finish the last corner near the doorway, you stop and stand up. You look around the room. The dark brown of the logs and the pale sand of the fire pit are now surrounded by a carpet of deep, vibrant green. The shanty looks alive. It looks like a part of the forest has come inside to protect you. The smell is incredible. It is thick and sweet, making the air feel heavy and clean at the same time. You take a moment for atmospheric silence. You walk to the center of the room and stand on the new floor. You close your eyes. You don't hear the sound of your boots hitting the hard ground anymore. Instead, there is only a very soft, muffled crush as the branches settle under your weight. You listen. The shanty is so well insulated now with the mud in the walls and the branches on the floor that you can barely hear the wind outside at all. Inside the room, the silence is soft and green. It feels like the world is wrapped in cotton wool. You take a deep, slow breath, letting the scent of the balsam fill your chest. It feels very peaceful. You are standing in a house made of trees, on a floor made of branches, under a roof made of bark. You are completely surrounded by the forest, yet you have never felt more safe. The silence is a reward for all the hard work you have done since the sun went down. You notice how the light from the smoke hole above hits the green floor. The needles look like they are made of emeralds where the moonlight touches them. You walk over to one of the sleeping areas and sit down. The floor sinks under you, but it doesn't hit the hard ground. It holds you up, bouncing slightly. You lean back against the log wall and feel the softness of the branches behind your legs. Your body is very tired. You can feel a dull ache in your lower back and a heaviness in your arms. But as you sit there on your lumberjack feathers, you feel a sense of deep content. You have turned a wild, freezing patch of woods into a place of comfort. You look at your boots, which are now dusty with needles and bits of bark. You feel a sense of pride in your work. You didn't just build a shelter, you built a home. The other men are starting to bring in the first armloads of dry wood for the fire. You know that the next step is the most important one. Once the fire is lit in the Camboose, the heat will react with the balsam floor. The warmth will make the sweet smell even stronger, and the branches will dry out, becoming even more springy. You stand up, feeling the bounce in the floor one last time. The shanty is ready. The walls are tight, the roof is solid, and the floor is soft. All that is missing now is the light and the heat. You walk toward the pile of firewood, ready to help bring the heart of the shanty to life. The green carpet is waiting to hold you while you sleep, and the long winter night is finally starting to feel warm. Now that the green carpet of balsam branches covers the floor, you must build the place where the men will actually sleep. In a shanty, there are no private rooms and no separate beds. Everyone lives and sleeps together in one big space. To stay warm in the 1800s, lumberjacks built a long wooden platform that ran along the walls of the shanty. This is a simple historical fact. This shared sleeping space was often called the long bed or the bunk. It was designed so that 40 men could lie side by side in a single row, using their shared body heat to keep the freezing night air away. You begin by building the frame for this massive bed. You find several long straight poles made of spruce or pine. You lay these poles about 2 feet off the ground, resting one end on the wall logs and the other end on a row of sturdy wooden posts. You use your heavy wooden mallet to drive the posts into the ground. Thud, thud, thud. The sound is solid and deep. You want this frame to be very strong. It has to hold the weight of many men, all resting at once. You feel the rough bark of the poles through your leather mittens. The wood is cold, but you know that soon it will be covered in the warmth of the balsam boughs. Once the frame is steady, you lay flat planks or split logs across the poles to make a platform. In the 1800s, these boards were not smooth or sanded. They were rough and often had splinters, but they were hidden under the thick layer of greenery you gathered earlier. You take more of the soft balsam fir tips and start to pile them onto the platform. You make this layer even thicker than the one on the floor. You want it to be at least a foot deep so that it feels like a soft, bouncy cushion. You use your hands to smooth the needles, making sure the feathers of the branches are all pointing the same way. As you work, you think about the microhistory detail of the deacon's seat. This is a long, heavy bench made from a single log that has been split in half. It runs along the entire length of the bed, right at the foot of where the men sleep. This bench is the most important piece of furniture in the shanty. It is where you sit to take off your heavy boots, where you eat your meals, and where you sit to sharpen your tools by the light of the fire. You touch the top of the bench. It is smooth from the many men who have sat on it before you. It feels solid and dependable. The way you get into these beds is very specific. Because the platform is one long row against the wall, you do not climb in from the side like you would at home. Instead, you have to climb in from the bottom, over the deacon's seat. In the 1800s, these were often called muzzle-loader beds. This is because you load yourself into the bed from the end, just like a soldier would load a bullet into the front of a muzzle-loading gun. You imagine the 40 men all sliding into their spots, shoulder to shoulder, feet toward the fire in the center of the room. It is a tight fit, but in the middle of a forest winter, being close to your friends is the best way to stay alive. You take a moment for atmospheric silence. You sit down on the deacon's seat and look at the long empty bed. The shanty is very quiet. The only sound is the very soft rustle of the balsam needles as they settle into place. You look at the dark corners of the room where the shadows are thick. The air is still and smells like a fresh forest. You realize that this long wooden shelf is more than just a place to sleep. It is where the community of the woods happens. It is where you will hear the snores of your friends and the crackle of the fire. You feel a sense of peace. The world outside is vast and cold, but here, in this small space, everything is built for comfort and safety. The silence feels heavy, like a thick wool blanket waiting to be used. You reach out and touch the wall logs behind the bed. You have placed a layer of cedar bark against the logs to keep the dampness of the wood from touching your blankets. The bark feels like thick, dry paper. It is another small detail that helps keep the night shift dry. You think about the spread that will cover everyone. In many shanties, there were no individual blankets. Instead, there was one giant, heavy cover made of thick wool that stretched over the entire row of men. You all shared the same blanket, just as you shared the same house and the same work. You look at the floor space between the deacon's seat and the Camboose fire pit. This is the walking path of the shanty. It is clear of branches so that the night watchman can walk back and forth to tend the fire. You stand up and test the bounce of the bed one more time. It feels wonderful. It is springy and soft, and the smell of the balsam is even stronger now that the branches have been crushed a little bit. Your body is starting to feel the weight of the day's labor. Your arms feel long and heavy, and your eyes are starting to feel itchy from the cold and the dust. The bed is ready. You have turned a pile of poles and some forest branches into a place of rest. You look at the long row of green feathers and imagine how good it will feel to finally lie down. You won't have a pillow made of feathers or foam. You will probably just use your heavy mackinaw coat or your spare pair of trousers rolled up under your head. It sounds hard, but when you are as tired as a lumberjack, any place to rest is a blessing. You notice a small bit of light reflecting off the axe you left leaning against the deacon's seat. The metal looks cold, but the wood of the bench feels warm. You run your hand along the edge of the seat, feeling the grain of the timber. You have built this with your own strength. Every pole was cut by you, and every branch was laid by you. You feel a deep sense of ownership. This is your spot. This is where you will recover your strength so you can do it all again tomorrow. The shanty is almost finished. The beds are made, and the heart of the room is waiting for the flame. You look toward the doorway, where the blue light of the snow is still visible. You are ready to close that door and start the fire. You are ready to stop being a builder and start being a part of the night shift. You take one last look at the long, green bed, feeling the quiet promise of sleep that it holds. The forest is outside, the walls are tight, and your bed is soft. You are safe. You are home. You step away from the bed and toward the middle of the room. You can feel the spring in your step on the green floor. Everything is in its place. The long bed is a symbol of the winter time for men to huddle together against the frost. You feel a warmth in your chest that has nothing to do with a fire. It is the feeling of being ready. The long winter is coming, but you have a place to lay your head. You pick up your axe and move toward the Camboose, ready for the most important moment of all. You stand before the massive sand-filled square of the Camboose. The shanty is finished, but it is still as cold as a tomb inside. Your breath is still a thick white cloud, and the logs of the walls are covered in a thin, sparkly layer of frost. It is time to bring the heat, To stay warm in the 1800s, you didn't just need any fire, you needed a fire that would burn all night without needing constant attention. This is a simple historical fact. Lumberjacks preferred to use hardwoods like maple, oak, or yellow birch for their main fire because these woods are very dense and burn much longer and hotter than the soft pine you used for the walls. You begin by laying down the back logs. These are two massive pieces of hardwood, almost as thick as your waist, placed at the very back of the sand pit. These logs act like a wall for the fire, reflecting the heat forward into the room instead of letting it escape toward the back. You move them into place with a heavy groan, feeling the rough, cold bark through your mittens. Then you place two smaller logs in front of them, creating a cradle for the smaller sticks and kindling. Now you reach into the pocket of your wool trousers and pull out a piece of birch bark. In the woods, this is a micro-history detail. Birch bark is often called the paper of the forest. Even if it is damp or covered in snow, the oils inside the bark make it catch fire almost instantly. You peel the bark into thin, curly strips. It feels like thick, oily paper in your hands, and it has a soft, silvery color. You tuck these curls into the center of your log cradle. You also pull out a small wooden box containing lucifers. This is an old name for early matches. They have a sharp, chemical smell, and when you strike one against a dry stone on the edge of the camboose, it bursts into a bright blue and yellow flame. You hold the match to the birch bark. The flame jumps greedily onto the curls of bark. At first, there is a tiny, high-pitched hissing sound. A small thread of black smoke begins to rise, twisting and turning like a dark ribbon. Then, with a sudden whoosh, the bark catches fully. The light is small at first, a tiny orange eye in the middle of the dark room, but it grows fast. The flame licks at the small twigs you have piled on top. You hear a soft crack as the wood begins to heat up. You lean back on your heels and watch. The room is starting to change. For hours, the only light has been the cold, blue glow of the moon. Now, a warm, dancing orange light begins to splash against the logs. You see your shadow grow long and thin, dancing on the wall behind you. The frost on the nearby logs begins to melt, turning into tiny, shiny drops of water that look like tears. The smell of the birch smoke is sweet and thick. It is the smell of survival. As the fire grows, you add larger branches of maple. The heat begins to push out in waves. You feel it first on your face. Your skin, which has been numb and cold for a long time, begins to tingle. It is a strange, prickly feeling as the blood starts to move faster in your cheeks. You take off your heavy mittens and hold your bare hands toward the flames. Your fingers are red and stiff, but the heat feels like a warm liquid washing over them. You can feel the joints in your hands loosening up. The warmth is so good it almost hurts. The fire is now a big, roaring beast in the middle of the room. The flames are reaching up toward the smoke hole, 3 or 4 feet high. They are bright yellow and deep orange, with little sparks of red jumping into the air like tiny fireflies. You hear the loud pop and crack of the sap inside the wood. Every time it pops, a shower of sparks flies up, disappearing into the dark opening in the roof. This is a moment of atmospheric silence. You stop moving and just watch the fire. You listen to the roar of the flames. It is the only sound in the world right now. You look up at the smoke hole. You can see the thin column of smoke rising perfectly straight, pulled by the cold air outside. It is working. The shanty is not filling with smoke. Instead, the lungs of the house are breathing out the grey mist. You look through the smoke and see a single star through the hole. It looks so far away and cold while you are standing in a circle of golden heat. You feel a deep sense of peace. The fire is your companion. It is the thing that turns a wooden box into a home. The silence is heavy and warm, filled only with the rhythmic breathing of the fire. The heat is starting to fill the whole shanty now. You notice the balsam floor beginning to warm up. The sweet smell of the fir needles is getting stronger as the heat releases the oils. It smells like a giant cup of forest tea. You look at the long bed and the deacon's seat. They are no longer dark and scary. They are glowing in the firelight, looking soft and inviting. You see the steam starting to rise from your wet boots and the bottom of your trousers. The fire is already starting to dry the world out. You take a heavy iron poker and nudge the logs. The wood is turned into glowing red coals in the center. These coals are the most important part. They hold the heat for a long time, even after the big flames die down. You look at the red glow and think about how many nights you will spend staring into these same embers. This fire will never truly go out all winter. There will always be a night watchman to add a log or stir the coals. You feel a sense of great pride. You started the first fire. You brought the sun into the middle of the woods. Your body feels lighter now that the cold is leaving your bones. You stand up and stretch your arms wide, feeling the heat all the way down to your toes. The shanty is alive. The walls are warm to the touch. The night shift can truly begin now, because the enemy, the freezing dark, has been pushed back outside the door. You take a deep breath of the warm, smoky air and smile. You are finally truly warm. The fire in the camboose is now a steady, pulsing heart of orange and red. The shanty is no longer a cold shell. It is a room full of moving shadows and growing warmth. You find yourself drawn toward the heat, your body moving slowly toward the center of the room. You feel a heavy weight on your feet. Your boots are soaked through from the hours of walking and working in the deep snow. In the 1800s, keeping your feet dry was not just about being comfortable. It was a matter of staying alive. This is a simple historical fact. If a lumberjack's feet stayed wet and frozen for too long, he could get a painful sickness called frostbite, or even trench foot, which could stop him from working for the rest of the winter. You walk over to the deacon's seat, that long wooden bench you built at the foot of the bed. You sit down heavily, feeling the solid wood beneath you. Your legs feel like they are made of stone. You reach down and begin to unlace your boots. These are not like the shoes people wear today. They are called shoepacks. A shoepack is a special kind of boot with a bottom made of thick rubber and the top made of heavy leather. They are designed to keep the water out, but after a long day in the woods, the snow always finds a way in. You pull other laces, which are stiff and frozen into hard knots. You have to use your fingernails to pick at the ice until the string comes loose. With a great heave, you pull off the first boot. Thump. It hits the green balsam floor with a heavy, wet sound. Then you pull off the second one. You look at your feet. They are covered in thick, grey wool socks. These socks are a specific microhistory detail. They are hand-knitted from the oil-rich wool of sheep, and many men wear 2 or even 3 pairs at the same time to cushion their feet against the hard boots. Your socks are soaking wet. They feel heavy and cold against your skin, and you can see the steam already starting to rise from them as the heat of the fire hits the damp fabric. You peel the wet socks off your feet. Your skin is white and wrinkled from the water, and your toes are a dull red color from the cold. You wiggle them, feeling the blood slowly returning to the tips. It is a tingly, itchy feeling that tells you the warmth is doing its job. You reach into your pack and find a pair of dry socks that you kept wrapped in a piece of oilcloth. You pull them on. The feeling of dry, soft wool against your tired feet is perhaps the greatest luxury in the entire forest. It feels like a warm hug for your skin. Now you must deal with the wet socks. You cannot just leave them on the floor. They would stay wet forever and might even freeze again. You look up at the space above the roaring fire. Hanging from the rafters, right over the glowing coals of the camboose, is a long wooden rack. It is made of thin poles tied together with leather strings. This is the drying rack, or the sock rack. It is a busy place in every shanty. There are already dozens of other socks hanging there, looking like strange, dark fruit hanging from a tree. You stand up and walk toward the fire. The heat is much stronger here. It feels like a solid wall of warmth pressing against your chest. You reach up and drape your wet wool socks over one of the poles. As soon as the fabric touches the heat, a thick cloud of white steam begins to rise. The socks seem to come alive, swaying gently in the rising hot air. You watch as the water inside the wool begins to turn into mist. The smell is very strong. It is the smell of damp sheep's wool and old wood smoke. Some people might find the smell strange, but to a lumberjack, it is the smell of a home being made. It means that tomorrow you will have dry clothes to wear. You stand there for a moment, looking at the long line of socks. You see red ones, grey ones, and blue ones. Each pair belongs to a different man, yet they all look the same under the orange light of the flames. You realize that everyone in this room is sharing the same struggle against the winter. You are all part of the same night shift. You look at the way the steam twists and turns as it heads toward the smoke hole in the roof. It looks like ghostly fingers reaching for the stars. This is a moment of atmospheric silence. You stop moving. You stop thinking about the work you did today or the work you have to do tomorrow. You just stand by the fire and watch your socks. You listen to the fire. It doesn't just roar, it whispers. It makes a soft hiss as a drop of water from a sock hits a hot coal. You hear the gentle clack-clack of the wooden poles as they move slightly in the warm breeze. The shanty are so quiet that you can hear the soft breathing of the men who have already curled up on the balsam boughs. In this silence, the world feels very small and very safe. The forest is huge and dark, but you are in a circle of light. You feel a deep sense of gratitude for these simple things. A dry pair of socks, a warm fire, a sturdy rack to hold your clothes. You realize that in the woods, the smallest things are often the most important. The silence is heavy and warm, like the air around the Camboose. You feel the tension leaving your shoulders. The fire is doing more than just drying your clothes, it is warming your spirit. You reach out and touch one of the socks. It is already starting to feel warm. The wool is scratchy but solid. You think about the woman who might have knitted these for you, a mother, a sister, or a wife. You can almost see her hands moving the knitting needles by a different fire, far away in a small town. You feel a connection to your home, even though you are miles deep in the wilderness. These socks are a bridge between your two lives. You notice that the shoe packs you left by the deacon's seat need attention too. You walk back and pick them up, being careful not to slip on the balsam needles. You place the boots near the edge of the fire pit, but not too close. If the leather gets too hot, it will crack and break. You want them to dry slowly. You turn them so the open tops are facing the warmth. You can see the dark dampness of the leather starting to turn into a lighter brown as the moisture escapes. You look around the room. The yellow light of the fire is bouncing off the logs and the green floor. The shanty looks like a golden cave. You see the iron pots hanging on the bar over the fire, waiting to be used. You see the sharp axes leaning against the walls, their metal heads reflecting the flames. Everything is in its place. The night shift is a time for repair. You are repairing your body with rest, and you are repairing your clothes with the heat of the fire. You sit back down on the deacon's seat. You run your hands over your dry socks, feeling the warmth. Your feet feel light and happy. You look up at the rack one last time. Your socks are still swaying, still steaming. They will be dry by morning. You take a deep breath of the smoky, wool-scented air. It is a good smell. It is the smell of a man who is ready for the winter. You feel a sense of peace settle over you. The day is done. The fire is bright. Your socks are drying. You are exactly where you need to be. You lean back against the cedar-covered wall. The bark is cool against your head, but the rest of your body is warm. You watch the fire dance, its flames licking the bottom of the cooking pots. You are no longer the watchman of the woods. You are the watchman of the fire. You are keeping the warmth alive. You feel your eyes getting heavy. The night shift is a long one, but it is a quiet one. You listen to the crackle of the maple logs and the soft rustle of the balsam bed. You are safe. You are warm. You are home in the heart of the woods. The fire is burning steady now, and the shanty is filled with a soft golden light. The heat has chased the chill from the corners of the room, and the smell of drying wool is mixed with something new and wonderful. It is the smell of food. In the 1800s, a lumberjack worked harder than almost anyone else. To keep your muscles moving and your body warm in the freezing cold, you needed a lot of energy. This is a simple historical fact. A lumberjack could eat 5,000 or 6,000 calories a day, which is much more than most people eat today. Your body was like a steam engine, and food was the wood that kept the fire inside you burning. You look toward the large iron pot hanging over the camboose. The cook, a man who wakes up earlier than everyone else, has been busy. In the woods, your meals were simple but very heavy. The most important food you had was salt pork. This is a specific microhistory detail. Salt pork is fatty meat from a pig that has been kept in a barrel of very salty water to stop it from going bad. It doesn't need a fridge. When it is cooked over the fire, the fat melts and becomes a warm, salty liquid that gives you the strength to swing your axe all day long. You take your tin plate and a heavy spoon. The plate is cold in your hands at first, but it quickly warms up as the cook ladles out a big portion of beans and pork. The beans are thick and brown, having cooked slowly for many hours near the hot coals. You also get a large piece of shanty bread. This is a thick, heavy bread that is often baked right in the ashes of the fire or in a Dutch oven. It is not light and fluffy like the bread from a shop. It is solid and stays in your stomach for a long time. You can feel the weight of the food on your plate, and the steam rises up to tickle your nose. You walk back to the deacon's seat to eat. You don't have a table or a chair. You just sit on the long wooden bench with your plate on your knees. You take your first bite of the salt pork. It is very salty and very greasy, but to a hungry man in the woods, it tastes better than a feast in a palace. You can feel the warmth of the food spreading from your stomach to your arms and legs. It feels like you are being plugged into a source of power. You use a piece of the thick bread to soak up the bean juice, making sure you don't waste a single drop. The shanty is full of the sound of eating. There is the clink of spoons against tin plates and the soft sound of men chewing. No one talks much while they eat. In a lumber camp, eating is a serious job. You need to get the food into your body so you can rest. You look at the other men sitting along the deacon's seat. Their faces are red from the firelight, and their eyes are focused on their plates. You feel a sense of belonging. You are all eating the same food, living the same life, and fighting the same winter. This is a moment of atmospheric silence. You finish your meal and set your empty tin plate down on the balsam floor. You stay perfectly still for a minute, feeling the fullness in your belly. The shanty has grown quiet again as the men finish their supper. You listen to the fire. It makes a soft, rhythmic hissing sound as the juice from the wood bubbles out. Outside, a heavy branch of a pine tree snaps under the weight of the snow, making a sharp crack that sounds like a gunshot in the distance. But inside, it is peaceful. The air is thick with the scent of wood smoke, salt pork, and the sweet balsam needles beneath your boots. You reach for your tin mug. It is filled with shanty tea. This is not the delicate tea you might have in a fancy house. It is black tea, brewed so long that it is as dark as ink and very strong. The cook often adds a bit of molasses or brown sugar to make it sweet. You hold the warm mug between your hands, letting the heat seep into your palms. You take a slow sip. The tea is hot and bitter, but the sugar gives you a little burst of energy. It washes away the grease of the pork and leaves you feeling calm and content. You look at the walls of the shanty. The logs look orange and black in the flickering light. You can see the shadows of the drying socks on the rack above the fire, moving slowly back and forth like dark ghosts. The room feels very small, but in a good way. It is a tight, warm pocket of life in the middle of a giant frozen world. You realize that you don't need much to be happy. A warm meal, a hot drink, and a place to sit are enough. You notice a small bit of salt on your thumb and wipe it off on your wool trousers. Your clothes are starting to feel dry now, and the itchiness of the wool is becoming a comfortable warmth. You look at the cook as he cleans the big iron pot. He moves slowly and quietly, showing respect for the rest of the men. He is the guardian of the food, just as you were the guardian of the trees. Without him, the night shift would be impossible. You feel the tiredness starting to pull at your eyelids. The heavy meal has made you sleepy. Your body is ready to stop moving and start the long process of healing itself for tomorrow. You take one last sip of your tea, feeling the warmth travel all the way down to your toes. The fire is lower now, glowing with a deep, steady red. You look at the long bed and the soft green boughs. It is almost time to lie down. You feel a sense of deep safety. Your belly is full, the fire is hot, and the forest is far away on the other side of the logs. You have survived another day, and tonight you will sleep well. You sit on the deacon's seat, leaning your back against the logs. Your stomach is full, and your feet are dry. Now that you have stopped moving, your senses begin to wake up to the world inside the shanty. In the 1800s, a lumberjack's life was defined by what he could smell and touch. Because it was so dark, your nose became your guide. This is a simple historical fact. The air inside a shanty was very thick because 40 men, a large fire, and piles of wet forest branches were all trapped in one small room. You don't just breathe the air here, you feel it. The strongest scent is the pine and the balsam. It is a sharp, sweet smell that comes from the green floor and the walls, but there is also the smell of the night shift itself. You can smell the wood smoke from the camboose, which has a dry, dusty scent. You can smell the pitch. This is a micro-history detail for the sticky sap that leaks out of the pine logs when they get warm. It smells like turpentine or a very strong cleaning medicine. It is a clean smell, but it is very powerful. When the heat hits the logs, the sap bubbles and sizzles, filling the room with this forest perfume. Mixed with the trees is the smell of the men. It is the scent of old sweat, heavy wool, and tobacco. Most of the men chew tobacco or smoke it in small clay pipes after supper. The blue smoke from the pipes drifts up toward the roof, mixing with the white steam from the drying socks. It is a heavy, comforting smell. It reminds you that you are not alone. You are surrounded by your friends and everyone smells the same. It is the scent of hard work and survival. You take a deep breath, and the air feels warm and thick in your lungs, like a heavy blanket you are breathing in. You reach out and touch the log behind you. The bark is rough and scaly. In some places, the bark has fallen off, and the wood beneath is smooth and cool. You can feel the grain of the wood, the tiny lines and ridges that show how the tree grew. You notice a small drop of sap that has turned hard. You touch it with your finger, and it feels like a small, sticky bead of glass. This is the lifeblood of the tree, frozen in time. The wood feels solid and honest. It doesn't move or shake, no matter how hard the wind blows outside. This is a moment of atmospheric silence. You close your eyes and just listen. You don't hear the wind anymore. The mud in the cracks of the walls has silenced it. Instead, you hear the voice of the shanty. You hear the slow rhythmic crack-pop of the maple logs in the fire. You hear the soft shush of a man moving on the balsam bed. You hear the tiny metallic tinkle of a spoon hitting a tin plate. And underneath it all, you hear the deep, heavy silence of the snowy forest. It is a silence so big that it seems to press against the outside of the logs. You feel like you are inside a giant wooden heart that is beating very slowly. You open your eyes and look at the camboose. The light is different now. The big flames have died down and the fire is mostly made of glowing red coals. The light they give off is soft and red, making everything in the room look like it is made of copper. You see the shadow of the cooking pot moving gently on the wall. You see the light reflecting off the steel head of an axe leaning in the corner. The metal looks like a pool of silver water. You reach out and touch the fabric of your trousers. The wool is scratchy and thick, but it feels wonderful because it is finally dry. You notice a small detail on the floor. A single green needle from a balsam branch has fallen onto your boot. You pick it up and look at it. It is tiny and flat, with 2 silver lines on the bottom. You break it in half, and a tiny burst of forest scent hits your nose. It is amazing how much smell can be trapped in one little needle. You realize that you are living in a world made entirely of the forest. Every sound, every smell, and everything you touch came from the trees. The air is getting a bit hazy from the pipe smoke and the steam. It makes the light from the fire look soft and blurry, like you are looking through a thin veil of silk. You feel very calm. Your body is heavy, and your mind is quiet. You are not thinking about the logs you have to cut tomorrow. You are just being here, in this moment, in this room. You feel a sense of deep safety. The night shift is the time when the forest cannot touch you. You have built a world of your own, and it is a warm, fragrant world. You look at the smoke hole. The square of sky is now a deep, dark indigo. You can see the 7 sisters' stars shining down. They look like tiny sparks that escaped from your fire and got stuck in the sky. You feel a connection to the stars, but you are glad for the roof between you and them. The cold of the universe is out there, but the warmth of the earth is in here. You take one last deep breath of the pine-scented air. It feels like the forest is inside you now, giving you strength. You shift your weight on the deacon seat. The wood is hard, but it feels good to your tired muscles. You look at your hands. They are stained with the dark sap and the grey dust of the wood. You don't want to wash them. The dirt is a part of who you are right now. It is the mark of a woodsman. You feel a sense of pride. You've worked hard, and now you are enjoying the reward of the quiet, scented night. You are ready for the next part of the night, the time when the stories begin and the world grows even smaller. The heavy tin plates have been stacked away, and the big iron pot has been scraped clean. The shanty is now entering its quietest and most peaceful hour. The work of the day is a memory, and the work of tomorrow is still a few hours away in the dark. In the 1800s, most lumber camps had a very strict rule of silence during mealtimes. This is a simple historical fact. The men were not allowed to talk while they ate, so that everyone could focus on getting enough food to stay strong. But now that supper is over, the silence is finally broken. This is the time for the shantyman's talk. A time when the only thing moving in the room is the firelight and the low, steady hum of men's voices. You lean back against the cedar bark on the wall. You are sitting on the deacon's seat, and your legs feel heavy and warm. To your left and right, other men are doing the same. Some are leaning forward with their elbows on their knees, staring into the red heart of the camboose. Others are already lying back on the soft balsam bed, their hands tucked behind their heads. The air is thick with the blue smoke from their pipes, which drifts up toward the smoke hole like tiny, slow-moving clouds. One of the older men reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small object. This is a micro-history detail, a Jew's harp. It is a tiny, horseshoe-shaped piece of metal with a thin spring in the middle. He places it against his teeth and begins to pluck the spring with his finger. Twang, bling, twang. The sound is small and metallic, vibrating through the quiet room. It is not a loud song, but a gentle, rhythmic drone that matches the flickering of the fire. It sounds like a large, musical bee humming in the corner. You watch his hands, which are rough and scarred from years of work, moving with great care as he plays. Soon, the music stops and the talking begins. It is not loud talking. No one shouts in the shanty at night. The voices are deep and soft, like the sound of the wind moving through the very tops of the pines. The men tell stories of the big pine they saw 3 years ago, or the time the river froze so thick that even the oxen could walk across it without fear. They talk about home too. They speak of small farms in the valley, of the color of the grass in the spring, and of the families who are waiting for them to return when the ice melts. You listen to a story about a man who once found a white moose in the middle of a snowstorm. The storyteller speaks slowly, pausing to take a puff from his pipe. You can see the glow of the tobacco in the bowl of his pipe, a tiny red star that grows brighter every time he breathes in. He describes the moose as being as white as the snow itself, moving through the trees like a ghost. You don't know if the story is true, and it doesn't really matter. In the woods, a good story is just as important as a sharp axe. It feeds your mind while the salt pork feeds your body. This is a moment of atmospheric silence. The storyteller stops for a long minute to poke at a log in the fire. In that pause, the whole room falls perfectly still. You look at the faces of the men. In the orange light of the coals, they look like statues carved from wood. You see the deep lines around their eyes and the thickness of their beards. Everyone is listening, not just to the man, but to the silence of the forest outside. You realize that you are part of a very old tradition. For as long as there have been woods and fires, men have sat together like this, sharing the dark and the warmth. The silence is not empty, it is full of the thoughts of 40 men, all resting together. You notice a small detail on the wall near the door. Someone has carved their initials into the log with a small knife. The letters are J.M., and they are surrounded by a small heart. You wonder who J.M. was and where he is now. The wood of the shanty holds the history of everyone who has ever lived here. Every notch in the logs and every mark on the deacon's seat tells a part of the story. You feel a sense of honor in being the one to sit here tonight. You are the watchman of these memories. The talk turns to the spring drive. This is a simple historical fact. The drive was the time when the ice melted and the logs were floated down the river to the sawmills. It was the most dangerous and exciting part of the year. The men speak of the cold water and the jams where the logs would get stuck in a giant pile. They speak of it with a mix of fear and excitement. It is the goal they are all working toward. Every tree you cut now is a piece of that future journey. You imagine the logs bobbing in the blue water, moving away from the dark forest and toward the world of houses and cities. The fire is getting lower now. The bright yellow flames have mostly disappeared, leaving behind a thick bed of glowing red embers. The heat is steady and deep. It feels like a physical weight pressing against your shanty clothes. You can feel the steam from your drying socks on the rack above, but it is much less now. The wool is almost dry. You reach up and touch one of your socks. It feels warm and fuzzy, like a small sleeping animal. One by one, the men stop talking. The Jew's harp is put away in a pocket. The pipes are tapped out against the edge of the camboose, making a soft clack-clack sound. The blue smoke begins to clear, drifting out through the hole in the roof. The room is becoming darker as the red glow of the coals grows dimmer. You see the men starting to move toward the long bed. They move quietly, trying not to disturb the ones who are already asleep. You stay on the deacon's seat for a few minutes longer. You look at the camboose and the way the grey ash is starting to cover the red coals. It looks like a layer of soft, warm snow. You feel a deep sense of peace. The stories have made the forest feel less lonely. You realize that even though you are far from home, you are not alone. You have the wood, you have the fire, and you have the shared words of your friends. You notice the sound of the wind again. It has picked up a little bit, making a soft, sighing noise as it hits the cedar scoops on the roof. It sounds like the forest is breathing. But the sound doesn't make you feel cold. It just makes you feel glad to be inside. You have the thick logs and the mud chinking between you and the winter. You are safe in your wooden cave. You stand up slowly. Your joints are a bit stiff. but your muscles feel loose and relaxed. You walk over to the pile of balsam branches that make up your bed. You can smell the sweet, citrus scent of the needles as you move. You look at the row of men, all tucked under their heavy wool blankets. They look like a row of logs themselves, still and solid. You find your spot and begin to prepare for sleep. The night is moving into its deepest hour. The stories have all been told, and the talk has faded away. There is only the sound of the fire and the soft breathing of 40 men. You take one last look at the red embers in the fire pit. They look like the eyes of the forest, watching over you while you rest. You feel a sense of deep content. The shanty is a place of stories, and tonight you have added your own silence to the pile. You are ready to close your eyes and let the night shift take over your dreams. You are lying back on the thick green carpet of the long bed. Your head is resting on your rolled-up mackinaw coat, and your body is finally starting to sink into the soft balsam needles. The fire in the camboose has settled into a deep, steady glow. Most of the men have stopped talking, and the shanty is filled with the sound of slow, heavy breathing. But as the room grows quiet, a new sound begins to grow outside the thick log walls. It is a sound you have heard many times before, but it never fails to make you feel small. It is the wind. In the 1800s, a winter storm in the deep forest was often called a blow. This is a simple historical fact. Lumberjacks were very careful about where they built their shanties because of these storms. They would look for a spot on the side of a hill or a thick grove of trees that would act as a shield against the wind. If you built your house in an open field, the wind would hit the logs with so much power it could steal all the heat away in minutes. You are glad your camp is tucked into a hollow, surrounded by tall hills. Even so, the wind has found you tonight. You hear it first as a low, distant moan. It sounds like a big, lonely animal wandering through the trees. It starts far away, up on the ridges where the pines are tallest. Then, it moves closer. You hear a high-pitched whistle as the air rushes through the needles of the white pines. Queen ho, wee. It is a cold, sharp sound that makes you pull your heavy wool blanket up to your chin. This blanket is a micro-history detail called a fro cloth, or a shanty blanket. It is made of very coarse, unwashed wool that still has the natural oils from the sheep inside it. This makes it heavy and a little bit stiff, but it is wonderful at blocking any tiny drafts that might try to crawl over the bed. The wind hits the roof of the shanty with a sudden thump. You can hear the cedar scoops groaning as the air tries to lift them, but they are too heavy, and they are held down by the weight of the snow that has been gathering on top of them all day. You listen to the way the wind moves across the smoke hole. It makes a deep, hollow sound, like someone blowing across the top of a giant glass bottle. Hoo! Hoo! Every time the wind gusts, a tiny puff of grey ash from the fire pit dances into the air, spinning in the red light before falling back to the sand. As you lie there, you think about the trees outside. You can hear them talking to each other in the storm. The tall pines make a long, sighing sound as they bend. The hardwoods, like the maples and oaks, make a much louder noise. Their frozen branches rub together, making a sound like dry bones clicking or a door creaking on old hinges. Creak. Snap. Sometimes, when the wind is very strong, a branch will break off and fall through the forest. In the woods, these falling branches are called widow makers because they are so dangerous for the men working below. But tonight, you are safe. You have a roof over your head that is stronger than any branch. This is a moment of atmospheric reflection. You lie perfectly still with your eyes closed and just listen to the battle between the storm and the shanty. Outside, the world is in chaos. The snow is being whipped into white clouds, and the cold is sharp enough to freeze a man's breath into ice in seconds. It is a wild, angry world out there, but inside, everything is different. The air is warm and smells of sweet balsam and woodsmoke. The fire is a steady, glowing friend. You feel a deep sense of peace. The louder the wind howls, the safer you feel. It is the best feeling in the world to be warm and dry when the rest of the world is freezing. The silence inside the room feels even deeper because of the noise outside. It is a heavy, golden silence that wraps around you like a cocoon. You notice a small sound near the wall. It is a tiny tink-tink. It is the sound of dry snow hitting the logs. The wind is throwing the frozen flakes against the wood like handfuls of sand. You reach out and touch the log nearest your head. You can feel a very slight vibration in the wood. The whole building is feeling the push of the wind, but it does not move an inch. The notches you cut and the heavy logs you moved are doing their job. The mud you pressed into the cracks is holding fast. Not a single breath of the frozen air is getting through to you. You feel a sense of pride in your work. You built this fortress, and it is standing its ground. The wind changes direction, and for a moment, the whistling stops. There is a sudden, heavy quiet outside, as if the forest is catching its breath. In this gap, you can hear the other sounds of the shanty more clearly. You hear the soft crackle of a log in the camboose as it breaks apart into glowing coals. You hear the deep, rhythmic snoring of a man at the far end of the long bed. You hear the sound of your own heart beating, slow and steady. You feel very connected to the men around you. You are all huddled together in this wooden box, like a family of bears in a cave. Then the wind returns with a roar. It sounds like a train rushing through the trees. You hear the wind shake in the logs, a deep, low vibration that you feel in your bones rather than hear with your ears. You imagine the snow piling up against the north wall, forming a big white drift that will reach all the way to the roof by morning. This snow is actually a good thing. It acts like a giant white blanket, adding even more insulation to the walls. The more it snows, the warmer the shanty becomes. You think about the night watchman who will have to get up soon to put more wood on the fire. He will have to move quietly through the dark room, his boots making soft sounds on the balsam floor. He will look up at the smoke hole and see the snow flying past in the dark. He is the guardian of the warmth. You feel a sense of gratitude for him. Because of his work, you can stay tucked under your heavy wool blanket, listening to the music of the storm without any worry. Your body is feeling very heavy now. The warmth of the room and the sound of the wind are working together to pull you towards sleep. It is a wonderful, sinking feeling. You feel like you are floating on a sea of soft balsam branches. The night shift of the forest is in full swing, with the wind and the snow doing their work, but your shift is over. You have done your part. You have moved the timber, built the walls, and started the fire. Now it is time for the shanty to take care of you. You take a deep, slow breath. The air is still and sweet. You notice that the smell of the pine is even stronger when the wind blows hard, as if the forest is trying to push its scent through the very wood of the walls. You pull the blanket a little higher, tucking it around your ears. The wool is scratchy, but it is a familiar, comforting scratchiness. It feels like home. The sound of the wind begins to fade as you drift deeper into sleep. It becomes a soft, blurred noise, like the sound of a distant river. You are no longer thinking about the storm or the cold. You are only thinking about the softness of the bed and the warmth of the fire. You feel completely safe. You are a lumberjack in the heart of the winter forest, and you have built a place where the wind can only sing to you, but it can never touch you. The shanty is strong, the fire is bright, and the night is yours. You let your eyes close for the final time, and the roar of the wind becomes a gentle lullaby, guiding you into a deep, dreamless sleep. You wake up for a moment in the middle of the night. The shanty is still and dark, lit only by the soft red pulse of the fire. The wind outside has calmed down, and the world feels very heavy with sleep. You cannot go back to sleep just yet, so you sit up slowly on the balsam bed. Your feet find the edge of the deacon's seat. Near your boots, leaning against the rough log wall, is your most important friend in the woods, your axe. You reach out a hand and touch the wooden handle. It feels smooth and cool. In the 1800s, a lumberjack's axe was not just a tool, it was his pride and joy. A man would spend a whole week's pay to get the very best steel. This is a simple historical fact. An axe had to be kept perfectly sharp because a dull blade was a dangerous blade. If the metal was blunt, it might bounce off a frozen tree instead of biting into the wood. If it bounced, it could hit your leg or your foot. To stay safe, you had to treat your axe with as much care as a mother treats a baby. You never let the blade touch the dirt, and you never let it get rusty. You pull the axe toward you, resting the heavy head on your knee. The metal is dark and cold, reflecting the dim red glow of the coals. This is a double-bit axe. This is a micro-history detail. It has two sharp edges instead of just one. One side is kept very thin and sharp for cutting through the soft wood of the trunk. The other side is a bit thicker and tougher, used for chopping off branches or working near the ground where there might be knots or frozen bark. You run your thumb very, very gently along the thin side. It is as sharp as a razor. You can feel the tiny, invisible teeth of the steel grabbing at the skin of your thumb. You reach into the pocket of your wool coat, which is lying next to you. You find a small, flat object. This is a whetstone. It is a simple tool, a small piece of hard, grey rock that you use to keep the edge of your axe perfect. You do not need a big machine to sharpen your tool. You just need this stone and a little bit of patience. You spit on the stone to make it wet. This helps the stone glide over the metal and keeps the tiny bits of steel from clogging up the rock. You begin to move the stone in slow, small circles along the edge of the blade. Shh, 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 shh. The sound is very quiet, like a secret being whispered in the dark. It is a rhythmic, peaceful sound. You can feel the vibration of the stone against the steel moving through your fingers. You are not pushing hard, you are just honing the edge, making it straight and true. You follow the curve of the metal, working from one end of the blade to the other. In the 1800s, a man's skill was measured by how well he kept his tools. If your axe was shiny and sharp, the other men knew you were a real woodsman. This is a moment of atmospheric silence. You stop the stone for a second and just look at the axe. The shanty is so quiet that you can hear the tiny tink of the metal cooling down as the fire grows smaller. You look at the handle, which is made of hickory wood. It has been polished by the oil from your hands over many months. It is the color of old honey. You think about all the trees this axe has touched. You think about the strength in your arms that goes into every swing. The axe is an extension of your own body. Without it, you are just a man in the cold. With it, you are a builder and a provider. The silence feels deep and respectful, as if the room itself knows how important this piece of steel is to your life. You flip the axe over to check the other side. You notice a small mark on the metal. It is the stamp of the forge where the axe was made. You can see the name of the blacksmith who hammered this steel into shape. It makes you feel connected to other workers far away. You think of the hot fire and the heavy hammers that made this tool so strong. You rub a little bit of grease from a piece of salt pork onto the metal. This keeps the damp air from causing rust. The grease makes the steel look dark and shiny, like the surface of a frozen pond at night. You lean the axe back against the wall. It stands there, ready for the morning. You look at the other tools in the room. You see the long cross-cut saws hanging from pegs on the walls. You see the heavy wooden mallets and the iron wedges used for splitting logs. Every tool has its place. Every tool is a part of the night shift. While the men are sleeping, the tools are resting too. They are waiting for the sun to come up so they can go back to the forest. You feel a sense of calm. Taking care of your tools is a way of taking care of yourself. It is a quiet ritual that makes you feel ready for whatever the winter throws at you. You look at your hands. They are stained with the grey dust of the whetstone and the oil from the wood. You wipe them on your trousers, feeling the strength in your fingers. You are a master of the wood, and your axe is your proof. You look at the fire one last time. The coals are a soft dusty pink now. You can see the shape of the logs you put on hours ago, now turned into glowing ghosts of wood. You feel the tiredness returning to your body. The act of sharpening the axe has made your mind feel sharp too, but now it is time to go back to the balsam bed. You lie down, pulling the heavy wool blanket back over your shoulders. The smell of the balsam needles is still there, mixing with the faint, metallic scent of the whetstone. You close your eyes, but in your mind, you can still feel the weight of the axe. You can still hear that soft shh, shh of the stone. You know that when you wake up in the dark of the early morning, your axe will be there waiting for you. It will be sharp, it will be strong, and it will be ready to bite into the pine. You feel a deep sense of security. You have everything you need to survive. The forest is big, but your axe is sharp. You let yourself sink back into the soft green feathers of the bed, falling into a deep and quiet sleep. The night shift continues, and the tools of the woods are ready for the dawn. You are the only person awake in the entire world. Or at least, it feels that way inside the dark, warm shanty. While the other 39 men are buried deep under their heavy wool blankets, you are sitting upright on the deacon's seat. Your eyes are fixed on the glowing heart of the Camboose. You have a very important job tonight. You are the night watchman. In the 1800s, this was a vital role in every lumber camp. This is a simple historical fact. The night watchman was responsible for keeping the fire burning so the men wouldn't freeze, and more importantly, he had to make sure the shanty didn't catch fire. With 40 men sleeping on dry balsam branches and a massive open fire in the middle of the room, one stray spark could turn the whole building into a trap in seconds. You feel the weight of this duty in your chest. It is a quiet, heavy feeling. You are the guardian of their sleep. You look at the men lying in a long row. They look so still and peaceful. You hear the symphony of their breath, the deep snores, the soft whistles, and the rhythmic sighing. It is the sound of a small village resting. To help you stay awake, you have a micro-history detail in your hand, a watchman's stick. This is a simple, long pole of smooth maple wood. You use it to poke the logs from a distance, but you also lean on it to keep yourself from nodding off. If you start to feel sleepy, the stick will wobble, and you will wake up before your chin hits your chest. You stand up slowly. Your joints make a tiny crack sound that feels as loud as a falling tree in the silence. You walk toward the pile of firewood near the door. You move with great care, placing your feet softly on the balsam floor. You don't want to wake anyone. You pick up 2 large logs of yellow birch. Birch is a wonderful wood for the night shift because it burns with a steady blue-white flame and doesn't spark as much as the pine does. You carry the logs back to the camboose. They are heavy and cold, but you can feel the hidden energy inside them. You use your stick to move the red coals around. You create a hot, glowing bed in the center of the sand pit. You lay the new logs down carefully. Clunk, plunk. As soon as the wood touches the heat, the bark begins to curl and smoke. You watch a tiny orange flame lick the edge of the log. It grows bigger and bigger until the whole log is wrapped in a soft golden light. The new heat hits your face, and it feels like a warm hand pressing against your skin. You feel a sense of satisfaction. The fire is fed. The warmth is safe for another 2 hours. Now, you check the safety barrel. This is another part of your duty. Near the door, there is a large wooden barrel filled with water from the frozen stream. You keep a heavy tin bucket next to it. If a spark ever lands on the dry balsam needles or a man's blanket, you have to be ready to douse it instantly. You look at the surface of the water. It is dark and still, reflecting the single lantern hanging from the rafters. You dip your fingers in, just to feel the bite of the cold. It reminds you that the winter is still out there, just a few inches away through the log walls. This is a moment of atmospheric reflection. You walk back to the deacon's seat and sit down. You turn down the wick of the lantern until it's just a tiny golden bead of light. You want the shanty to be as dark as possible so the men can rest. In this deep orange-red gloom, the room looks different. The logs of the walls seem to pulse with the light of the fire. The shadows of the hanging socks move like giant, slow-moving pendulums on the ceiling. You listen to the silence. It is not true silence. It is a working silence. You hear the fire breathing a low rhythmic huff as the air is pulled into the coals. You hear the wood of the shanty expanding and contracting in the cold, making tiny tick-tick sounds. You realize that you are the only one seeing this. You are the only one who knows the shanty in the middle of the night. It is a lonely job, but it is also very beautiful. You feel a deep connection to the building and the forest. You are the bridge between the day that passed and the day that is coming. The silence is heavy and warm, like the smell of the wood smoke that hangs in the air. You look up at the smoke hole. The squarer sky has changed color again. It is no longer deep blue, it is a dark, velvety black. The stars are so bright, they look like they're hanging just above the roof. You see a shooting star flash across the opening, a tiny silver scratch on the darkness. It is gone in the second, but it makes you feel lucky. You think about the night shift and how most people in the world are tucked into beds in towns and cities. They will never see the stars from the middle of a frozen forest. They will never know the peace of a firelit shanty at 3 in the morning. Your eyes move back to the drying rack. The socks are no longer steaming. They look dry and stiff, ready to be pulled on in a few hours. You reach up and touch one. It is warm and smells like clean wool and smoke. You feel a sense of pride. Because you kept the fire going, these 40 men will wake up to warm clothes and a warm room. They will have the strength to do their hard work because you did your quiet work. In the woods, everyone depends on everyone else. You are the anchor that holds them all in place while they dream. You notice a small mouse scurrying across the floor near the wood pile. It is a tiny grey shadow, looking for a crumb of shanty bread. You don't chase it away. In the middle of the night, even a mouse is company. You watch it for a moment and it disappears back into the logs. You feel a strange sense of kindness toward all living things tonight. The forest is a hard place, but inside these walls there is only peace. The fire is burning perfectly now. The birch logs have turned into solid blocks of glowing orange. You don't need to add any more wood for a while. You lean back against the wall, feeling the rough cedar bark against your head. Your watchman's stick is resting across your knees. You are tired, but it is a good kind of tired. You feel awake and alert, your senses sharp in the dark. You are the watchman, and your watch is going well. You think about the morning. Soon the cook will wake up and start the big pots of coffee and beans. The silence will be broken by the sound of boots and loud voices. The night shift will end and the day shift will begin. But for now, the world belongs to you. You take a deep breath of the warm, smoky air. It tastes like the forest and the fire. You feel safe. You feel useful. You watch the red light dance on the ceiling and listen to the soft breathing of your friends. The night is long and the forest is vast, but you are here and the fire is bright. Your watch continues in the heart of the woods. You feel the heaviness in your eyes now. The watchman's light is just a tiny spark in the corner of your vision, and the red glow of the fire is like a soft, warm hand pulling you toward rest. You move away from the fire and toward the long bed. You climb over the deacon's seat, stepping carefully on the green floor. You reach into the muzzle-loader bed and find your spot. This is the place where you will spend the next few hours, hidden away from the world. In the 1800s, the way men slept in a shanty was very different from how we sleep today. You did not have your own room or even your own bed. You slept in a long row with 40 other men. This is a simple historical fact. Huddling together was the only way to stay alive during the coldest nights. Even with a massive fire in the Camboose, the air near the walls could still be freezing. By sleeping shoulder to shoulder, the men shared their body heat, creating a long line of warmth that the winter could not break. You feel the person next to you move slightly as you slide in. There is no space between you, and that is a good thing. Their warmth becomes your warmth. You reach for your turkey. This is a micro-history detail that every lumberjack knew well. A turkey was not a bird. It was the name for your personal kit bag. It was usually just a large sack made of heavy canvas or an old grain bag. It held everything you owned in the world: a spare woolen shirt, a few letters from home, a small sharpening stone, and perhaps a wooden carving you were working on. Tonight your turkey is your pillow. You tuck the rough bag under your head, adjusting the lumpy shapes of your clothes inside until it feels right. It is not as soft as a pillow filled with feathers, but it smells of your own life and the clean scent of the cloth. You lie back and feel the balsam boughs beneath you. They are wonderful. They don't feel like hard branches anymore, because you laid them so carefully, like the feathers on a wing. They feel like a thick, springy mattress. As your weight settles, you hear the soft crush of the needles. They release one last burst of that sweet citrus smell. It is so strong it feels like you are sleeping inside a giant orange. The branches move with you, shaping themselves to your back and your shoulders. You feel like the forest is holding you up, keeping you safe from the hard, frozen earth below. You pull the communal blanket up to your chin. This is the big, heavy wool cover that stretches over several men at once. It is made of thick grey wool that has a bit of a scratchy feel, but you don't mind. The weight of it is comforting. It feels like a heavy shield. Underneath this blanket, the air is warm and still. You can feel the heat of your own body being trapped by the wool. You wiggle your toes, enjoying the feeling of your dry socks. The woolen fabric is soft against your skin, a complete contrast to the cold, biting wind you face during the day. This is a moment of atmospheric silence. You lie perfectly still, with your eyes half closed. You look up toward the roof. In the dark, the cedar scoops look like long, dark shadows. You can see a tiny bit of smoke drifting slowly toward the hole in the center. The shanty is so quiet now. You listen to the sounds of the men. There is a slow, steady rhythm to the room. In and out, in and out. The sound of 40 men breathing together is like the sound of the ocean hitting a faraway beach. It is a very peaceful, low noise that makes you feel like you are part of something much bigger than yourself. You are not just a man sleeping. You are part of the camp, part of the woods, and part of the night. The silence is thick and heavy, like the wool of your blanket. You hear the night watchman move quietly in the distance. You hear the soft clink of his stick against the fire frame, and the gentle hiss of a new log beginning to burn. These sounds do not wake you up. They make you feel even more secure. You know that someone is awake, watching over the fire, so that you don't have to worry. You can let go of the world. You don't have to think about the trees, the snow, or the ice. Your only job right now is to rest. You think about the night shift of your own body. While you are sleeping, your muscles are fixing themselves. The aches in your shoulders from the heavy saw and the tiredness in your legs from the deep snow are slowly fading away. The warmth of the balsam bed and the heavy blanket are like a medicine. You feel your heartbeat slowing down, matching the slow rhythm of the fire's pulse. You are sinking deeper and deeper into the green boughs. A small sound comes from outside the logs. It is the long, high-pitched howl of a wolf, far away on the mountain. It is a lonely, cold sound that echoes through the frozen trees. In the past, that sound might have made you feel afraid, but tonight, inside the shanty, it just sounds like a song. You know that the wolf is out there in the wind and the snow, while you are here in the warm dark. The thick logs of the wall are like a giant hand protecting you. You feel a sense of pity for anything that has to be outside on a night like this. You pull your blanket just a little bit higher, feeling the scratchy wool against your cheek. You notice how the red light of the fire dances on the ceiling. It creates patterns that look like moving leaves or flowing water. You watch them with sleepy eyes, letting your mind drift. You are no longer thinking in words. You are just feeling the warmth, the smell of the pine, and the softness of the bed. You feel like you are floating in a warm, dark pool of water. The muzzleloader bed is a perfect name for it, because you have been loaded into this spot like a secret, hidden away from the world until the morning comes. The turkey under your head feels solid and dependable. You think of the things inside it, the letter from your family that you have read so many times. The paper is soft, like silk. You feel a sense of love for the people far away, and you know that the work you are doing here will help them. This thought makes you feel strong and content. You are doing what a man must do, and the forest is giving you a place to recover. The air in the shanty is perfectly still now. The night shift is in its deepest hour. You can no longer hear the wind, and even the sounds of the fire are becoming part of the background. You are right on the edge of a deep, dreamless sleep. You feel your body becoming very light, as if you are made of nothing but air and wood smoke. You are a part of the shanty now, just as much as the logs and the fire. You are home. You are safe. You are warm. You let your eyes close all the way, and the dark world of the woods disappears, replaced by the soft green peace of the balsam sleep. You are deep in your sleep now. The shanty is a world of shadows, with the last red glow of the fire painting soft lines on the log walls. The heavy wool blanket feels like a warm weight pressing you into the soft balsam bed. You are so comfortable that you can no longer feel where your body ends and the bed begins. Your mind is starting to drift away from the cold woods and the dark night. It is moving forward in time toward the end of the long winter. You are dreaming of the spring. In your dream, the white world of the snow is beginning to melt. You can hear a new sound that you have not heard for many months. The sound of running water. In the 1800s, the end of the winter did not mean the work was over. It meant the start of the spring drive. This is a simple historical fact. The lumberjacks spent all winter cutting trees so that they could float them down the river to the sawmills once the ice broke. The river was the only road the logs could take to reach the big cities. Without the spring floods, the wood would just sit in the forest and rot. In the dream, you are standing on the bank of a wide, rushing river. The water is a deep, dark blue, and it is moving very fast. It is filled with thousands and thousands of logs. They look like a giant army of brown sticks bobbing in the water. You can hear them hitting each other. Clack, thump, clack. It is a loud, busy sound, like 1,000 wooden drums playing at once. The air does not smell like wood smoke anymore. It smells like wet earth, melting ice, and the fresh, cool spray of the river. It is a big, exciting smell that makes your heart beat faster. You are holding a very special tool in your hands. This is a microhistory detail, a peavey. It is named after the man who invented it, Joseph Peavey. It looks like a long wooden pole made of strong ashwood, about 5 feet long. At the end, there is a sharp metal spike and a big swinging iron hook. You use the peavey to grab the logs and roll them in the water. If the logs get stuck in a jam, you have to walk out onto the moving wood and find the one log that is holding everything up. It is dangerous work, but in your dream, you feel as light as a bird. Your boots have sharp metal spikes on the bottom to help you grip the wet bark. You dance from one log to another, feeling the wood roll and bob beneath your feet. The sun is high in the sky. It is a different kind of sun than the one you see in winter. This sun is warm and yellow. You can feel it on the back of your neck, soaking into your wool shirt. It feels like a warm hand resting on your shoulders. You see the white spray of the water as it hits the rocks, turning into tiny rainbows in the light. Everything is moving. Everything is loud and full of life. You feel a sense of great joy. The long dark night shift of the winter is over, and the world is wide and bright again. This is a moment of atmospheric silence in your dream. You stop moving and stand on a large, steady pine log in the middle of the river. For a minute, the roar of the water seems to fade away. You look back toward the forest. The trees are starting to turn a light, misty green as the new leaves wake up. You see a deer standing on the bank, watching the logs go by. In this silence, you feel the power of the water. It is carrying the work of your whole winter away to the world. You realize that every tree you notched, every log you skidded through the snow, and every night you spent in the shanty was for this moment. You feel a deep sense of pride. You are part of a giant machine made of wood and water. The silence is peaceful and full of light. You feel the sun on your face and the cool mist on your skin. It is a beautiful, perfect moment of rest in the middle of the rush. You watch a single log float past you. It is a white pine, just like the ones you used to build the shanty walls. It looks different now, wet and shiny in the sun. It is headed for a sawmill where it will be turned into boards to build a house, a school, or a bridge. You think about how the forest is helping people you will never meet. You feel like a hero of the woods. The dream begins to change. The bright blue of the river starts to mix with the orange light of the fire in the shanty. The sound of the rushing water turns back into the soft snoring of the men on the long bed. You feel the scratchy wool of the blanket against your chin again. The sun on your neck becomes the warmth of the fire pit. You are not on the river anymore. You are back in the balsam bed, tucked away in the heart of the winter. But the dream stays with you. It is a promise of what is to come. You know that the ice will not last forever. You know that the sun will return and the rivers will flow. This thought makes the winter feel easier to bear. You are not just surviving the cold, you are waiting for the spring. You feel a sense of deep content. Your body is resting, and your mind is full of the bright, moving water. You notice the smell of the balsam needles again. In your dream, they smelled like the forest in the rain. Here in the shanty, they smell sweet and dry. You move your legs slightly, feeling the springy branches beneath you. They are soft and supportive, like a friendly hand holding you up. You feel very safe. The log walls are thick and strong, keeping the dream inside and the winter outside. You think about your PV again. You can almost feel the smooth wooden handle in your palms. You know that in a few months, your hands will be calloused and strong from using it. You will be a river pig, a man who lives on the water. But for now, you are a shanty man, a man who lives in the trees. Both are good lives. Both are honest work. You feel a sense of balance. The night shift of the winter is just one part of the story. The fire in the camboose makes a soft pot sound. A single spark flies up and disappears through the smoke hole. You watch it in your mind, imagining it as a tiny star. The room is very still. The night watchman is probably sitting by the fire, his eyes fixed on the coals. You are glad he's there. Because of him, you can stay in your dream of the river. You sink deeper into the bed. Your breath is slow and steady. You are no longer thinking about the axes or the saws. You are only thinking about the blue water and the logs moving toward the sea. The feeling of the sun is still there, a warm memory in your bones. You feel a sense of great peace. The forest is quiet, the shanty is warm, and the spring is waiting for you in the dark. You let the dream take you again. The river returns, and the sound of the wooden drums fills your ears. You are walking on the logs, moving with the water, heading toward the light. You are a part of the woods, and the woods are a part of you. You are safe. You are warm. You are dreaming of the drive. The night is long, but it is a good night. You let yourself go, drifting further and further into the soft green silence of the balsam sleep. You wake up before the world has any colour. The shanty is still very dark, but it is not the deep heavy black of the middle of the night. It is a soft grey dark. You are still tucked under your heavy wool blanket, and for a moment you don't move a single muscle. You feel the warmth of the men on either side of you. It is a solid, living heat that has kept the frost away all night. But as soon as you move your hand out from under the blanket, you feel it. The air in the room has turned very cold. In the 1800s, the night shift for the watchmen ended, just as the day shift for the lumberjacks began. This is a simple historical fact. Lumberjacks were expected to be out in the forest, standing by their chosen trees, before the first ray of sunlight hit the snow. This meant waking up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. To work a full day in the winter, you had to use every minute of light the sun gave you. The forest does not wait for anyone, and the cold is sharpest just before the dawn. You lie there for a minute, listening. The fire in the camboose is now just a pile of glowing red eyes buried under white ash. The night watchman has finished his duty and is probably catching a few minutes of sleep himself. The room is very quiet, but it is a different kind of quiet than the one you fell asleep to. It is an expectant silence. It is the silence of 40 men, all starting to wake up, their bodies sensing that the rest is over. Then, the silence is broken by a sound that echoes through the wooden walls. It is a long, loud, and brassy note. This is a micro-history detail called the Gabriel horn, or sometimes just the Gaby. It is a very long horn made of tin, sometimes 4 or 5 feet long. The cook stands near the door and blows into it with all his might. The sound is not pretty. It is a loud, mewing noise that sounds like a giant, grumpy cow. It shakes the very logs of the shanty. It is the signal that the day has begun. There is no more time for dreams of spring rivers. The winter forest is calling. You hear the first sounds of the men moving. There is the heavy thump of feet hitting the green balsam floor. You hear the creak of the long bed as the weight of 40 men shifts at once. You sit up slowly, and the cold air hits your chest like a splash of icy water. It makes you gasp just a little bit. The warmth of the bed is so tempting, but you know you cannot stay. You reach for your shoe packs, which you left near the edge of the fire pit. They are dry now, and the leather feels stiff and cold. You pull on your heavy wool socks. They are warm from the drying rack, and they feel wonderful against your skin. You slide your feet into your boots and pull the laces tight. Your fingers feel a bit clumsy because they are cold, but you know the rhythm of the knots by heart. You stand up on the deacon's seat and stretch. Your joints feel a little bit tight, like the frozen branches of the trees outside. But as you move, the blood starts to flow. You feel the strength returning to your arms and legs. This is a moment of atmospheric silence. You stand perfectly still for a second, looking at the shanty. The light from the dying fire is very dim now, but a new light is coming through the smoke hole. It is a pale, ghostly blue light. It is the light of the blue hour, that time just before the sun rises when the snow looks like it is made of fallen stars. You look at the other men. No one is talking yet. Everyone is moving in a slow, silent dance, putting on coats, finding hats, and checking tools. The silence is heavy with the thought of the work ahead. It is a quiet, shared understanding that the hard part of the day is about to start. You walk toward the camboose. The cook has already placed a massive iron pot of tea over the coals. The steam is rising in thick, white clouds, smelling of bitter leaves and sweet molasses. You take your tin mug and dip it into the pot. The metal handle is hot, and you have to hold it with the edge of your wool sleeve. You take a sip, and the hot liquid feels like a torch going down your throat. It wakes up your stomach and sends a wave of heat all the way to your fingers. It is the fuel you need to face the frost. You look at your axe leaning against the wall where you left it. The steel looks grey and sharp in the blue light. You pick it up, feeling the familiar weight and the smooth hickory handle. It feels like a part of your own arm. You check the edge one last time with your thumb, remembering the quiet shh, shh of the stone from the night before. It is ready. You are ready. The door of the shanty is opened and a blast of freezing air rushes in. It is so cold it makes the steam from the tea disappear instantly. You can see the world outside. The trees are dark shapes against a sky that is turning from indigo to a soft, pale grey. The snow is deep and untouched, a perfect white blanket that covers everything. You pull your mackinaw coat tight and wrap your red wool scarf around your neck. You pull your hat down low over your ears. You feel a sense of purpose. The night shift of the shanty is over. The safety of the balsam bed and the warmth of the fire have done their job. They have given you back your strength. You are no longer a tired man looking for rest. You are a woodsman ready for the timber. You look at the men around you, and you see the same look in their eyes. You are a team. You built this house together, and now you will go out and work the forest together. You notice the smell of the morning. It is different from the smell of the night. It is the smell of the night. It is the smell of living cold. It is clean and sharp, without the scent of wood smoke yet. It smells like ice and deep, frozen earth. You take a deep breath, and it feels like you are drinking the forest itself. Your lungs feel wide and strong. The first men are already stepping out into the snow. You hear the crunch, crunch, crunch of their boots. It is a rhythmic, steady sound. You follow them, stepping over the high threshold of the door. As you step outside, you look back at the shanty for a second. It looks small and sturdy with a thin ribbon of smoke rising from the roof. It has kept you safe all night. It has been your fortress against the wild. You feel a flash of gratitude for the logs and the mud and the balsam branches. The stars are fading away now, one by one. The morning star is the only one left, shining brightly in the east. The world is waking up. You hear the distant sound of a woodpecker hitting a hollow tree tap, tap, tap. It sounds like a little hammer. You feel a sense of peace. The night was long and the forest was dark, but you have made it through. You are standing on the edge of a new day and the work is waiting. You adjust the axe on your shoulder. The metal is cold against your wool coat, but you don't mind. You feel the power in your muscles. You are part of the night shift no longer. You are the watchman of the morning now. You take your first step into the deep snow, feeling the resistance of the white powder. Crunch. You are heading toward the tall pines, toward the heart of the woods. The Shanties behind you, a warm memory in the grey light. You are ready for the sun to rise. The pale blue of the dawn is slowly turning into a soft, glowing gold as the sun begins to climb behind the frozen hills. You are standing in the deep snow, your boots buried up to the shins in the white powder. Behind you, the shanty is a dark shape against the snow, its cedar roof dusted with white and its single column of smoke rising straight and true into the quiet air. You take a moment to look back at the doorway. You can almost feel the warmth of the fire still clinging to your skin, a lingering memory of the night shift. That little log building has been more than just a shelter. It has been your whole world. In the 1800s, the bond between a lumberjack and his shanty was very strong. This is a simple historical fact. For many months of the year, those four walls were the only thing between you and a wilderness that didn't care if you lived or died. The shanty was where you found your friends, your food and your strength. As you stand in the cold morning air, you feel a deep sense of honor. You have been a guardian of the past tonight, living the life of the men who built the world with their own two hands. You have seen the forest through their eyes, and you have felt the weight of the winter just as they did. You reach into the pocket of your mackinaw and find one last micro-history detail, a small piece of spruce gum. This is the hardened sap of the spruce tree. In the woods, this was the lumberjack's version of sweets or chewing gum. It is purple and hard, but as you pop it into your mouth and the warmth of your breath softens it, it turns into a spicy, woody treat. It tastes like the very essence of the trees you have been living with. It is a sharp, clean taste that clears your head and makes you feel fully awake. You look at the tall white pines ahead of you. They are no longer dark and scary. They are bright with the morning light. You start to walk, moving away from the camp. With every step, the sound of the shanty grows more distant. You can no longer hear the clink of the tin plates or the low murmur of the men. You are entering the day shift now. You find the tree you marked yesterday. The tall, straight pine will be the first to fall today. You set your pack down in the snow and take your axe from your shoulder. The steel catches the first direct ray of the sun, flashing like a mirror. You feel a sense of readiness. Your body is rested, your belly is full, and your mind is calm. This is a moment of atmospheric silence. You stand perfectly still before the great tree. The forest is completely quiet. The wind has died down to a whisper, and even the birds are still silent. You look up at the tree, and then you look back at the trail you made in the snow. You realize that you have traveled a long way through the night. You have moved from the cold dark into the warm firelight, and now you have come back out into the light of a new day. You feel a deep peace in your heart. You are exactly where you were supposed to be. The silence is not empty. It is a full, heavy peace that holds the whole forest in its hand. The sun is rising higher now, and the shadows of the pines are stretching across the snow like long blue fingers. You take a deep breath of the freezing air, feeling the strength in your lungs. You look at your hands, rough and ready for the work. You are a watchman of history, and you have kept the watch well. You have seen the night shift through to the end, and now it is time to let the day begin. You feel a sense of closure. The story of the shanty is finished for now, but the trees are still there and the work goes on. The shanty will be there when you return this evening. The camboose will be waiting with its red coals, and the balsam bed will be soft and green. You know that you are safe. You know that you are part of the forest, and the forest is part of you. You take one last look at the horizon, where the sky is now a bright, clear blue. The winter is still here, but it no longer feels like an enemy. It is just the world you live in. The air is growing warmer as the sun touches the tops of the trees. Your breathing is slow and steady, and you feel a deep sense of relaxation spreading through your whole body. The long winter night has passed, and you are safe and warm. You can let go of the stories and the tools now. The shanty is behind you, and the fire is still burning bright in your memory. You are back in your own time, in your own bed, but the peace of the forest is still with you. You feel the weight of your own blankets now, soft and heavy, like the wool of the shanty. Your room is quiet and safe. The night shift is over for everyone. You have seen the work, you have felt the warmth, and now it's time to simply be. You are drifting away from the woods and toward the morning. You feel a sense of deep content. You have done the work, and you have kept the watch. The sun is rising. The gates are opening. The watch is ended.